Don't worry, I'm probably not going to start things up until 5. I actually still need to tweet out that we're going to be going live soon. Uh, but I am here. I am here to hang out with all of y'all and, watch or I guess listen to an episode of Campaign with you. This is a very strange thing, but I hope that people like it because hello. I have always kind of wanted to hang out with people while I listen to my favorite podcasts. And if this is a thing that we can make happen, like a regular thing, I think it would be rad to hang out with all of you, even if I had to make the podcast that we listen to. Hello. Um, so the way this thing I think is gonna work is I have the episode queued up, and at the point where the mid roll comes in, it'll kind of fade out, and then I will hop on mic and we'll talk to each other a little bit, and I'll answer questions or whatnot. I'll also be chatting with all of you throughout the episodes in the stream. But I can give you behind the scenes details and things like that. I have no idea what this is going to be. So, like, I also have a video game queued up in case you don't need me to be so active in chat. We'll see what it is we make of this. For the time being, I am gonna talk very passively. And I am going to tweet out that we're going to be going live soon. The game, if I am playing a game, which again I don't know that I will have the time for it, or if I'll be actively chatting or whatnot, is going to be FTL. I wanted a more pirate themed game, and I downloaded a bunch of pirate themed games in like anticipation of this, and then my computer started dying, and they all got deleted. But there are space pirates in FTL, and the first campaign was in space, so I feel like it's a good bridge between those two thematically. So that might be going on in the background. Yes, I did download Sid Mariner's Pirates actually, or the remake of Sid Mariner's Pirates that came out in like the 2000s. But again, I lost all of the data on my computer trying to save this thing. Don't worry, no episodes were harmed in that process. I made sure of that. But I did lose a bunch of games and whatnot, so that was kind of a bummer. Um, I am going to tweet out that we're going live with this thing, so that I will be silent for a tiny bit. Do I'm excited that we got a crowd for this. Oh, I'm so happy about everybody being here. Okay, copying that, tweeting that, and switching accounts. A wiser person probably would have timed these tweets to go out before I had to launch, but I am not a wiser person. I'm a different bird. Okay. So I got those tweets squared away. So, hello, heroes, and welcome to our first Streamcast. We are going to be streaming the first episode of an all audio product on Twitch. I've prepared a couple fun little visuals to accompany this process. But we're just gonna see how this goes. there is a potential that I might be playing FTL kind of in the background of this. I really have no idea how involved in the chat I'm going to need to be for this process. So we're just gonna get started soon. I'm gonna give actually people a couple minutes to settle in and get here. I know I am not always prompt on everything that I do, so I'm just gonna extend the courtesy to my audience that I kind of always need in my normal life. If you have any questions about Skyjacks or anything related to the campaign, it's a good time to ask them. I will be answering questions that might pop up in the middle of the episode, basically at the point where we normally break for mid-roll. And I will just sort of break things down. Who is your favorite Skyjacks? Mine is Slam. Dang. Boy howdy. I like. Do you mean of the main cast, or like is this just like our NPCs? I really like of the. I mean, I love everybody in the main cast. There's no way I can pick favorites there. But of the NPCs that happen to be on the boat, I like playing Spit quite a bit. I think Nodo's probably is gonna Nodo's and Wendell are gonna have like the most interesting stories. So I kind of dig those. And you gotta love Johnny's Jerk Off Jerry. Baritone Barry by Tyler and Toku by Tyler are both very good. I love each and every one of Liz's sick children that she plays. And for JPC, I know that I kind of stole the character because he became very convenient, but Overboard is super great. Um, and unrelated to any like Skyjacks NPCs, I also like JPC's character who translates for people that came up in the last couple episodes. That was a pretty good thing. A behind the scenes peek, because it came up while I was tweeting. Originally, and I think this might still be in a couple places, we were going to do Skyjacks as two separate words. And so I think for like the first 3 episodes, it was posted as 2 separate words on like both Simplecast and the website. And then I sort of realized that the SEO on that would be very bad because Skyjacks are a thing. Like they are a type of construction equipment. So we shifted over to one word Skyjacks, which gives us a little bit better SEO. But now we're kind of beating Skyjacks the equipment in SEO anyway, which is fine because people are thinking very different things. I don't think there's any brand confusion. Nobody looking for a piece of heavy equipment is also going to be looking for a podcast about pirates. Let's see. It is 5:05. We'll be ready to roll very soon. I am just going to navigate over to Twitch on my phone and check out the chat, leaving some time for any stragglers to arrive if they would like. And this is not giving me any information on the stream itself. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think 8 minutes is probably enough. So I am going to start this episode. I'm probably going to be muting my mic while the episode itself is playing. But I will hop on once we reach the mid-roll. So with all of that out of the way, let's get to the show.
Our story begins in the clouds. A seemingly endless field of white stretches ahead of us. Moisture whips at the faces of people who bear the scars and lines of hard-won years. Light dances and prisms off droplets, filling the air with a dazzling display as they cut through the soft banks. Despite this, the men and women on the deck are focused solely on their work. Ropes tighten under the grips of calloused hands as a booming voice calls out over the deck for more fire. We cut to coal being shoveled into into soot-black furnaces that have brilliant columns of fire blasting heat into a canopy, the scope of which is obscured by fog. Finally, the wooden bottom of a large ship cuts through the clouds above, and we get our first look at the Uhuru, a sky ship, captained by the notorious Oromar Vale. We begin at the front of the ship, and I think looking off into the distance at the front of the ship, hanging off the side of one of the ropes, we find Jonit. Tyler, would you like to describe your character for us?
Yes, so hanging off the side of the ship is a boy. I'm about 15 years old. He's about like 5'5", 5'6". His name's Jonit. He's got sort of shaved sides of his head. He's got like a big old afro on the top, kind of like a frohawk going, wildly blowing in the wind. He has a crimson red headband tied around his head as the wind is like whipping back and forth. He's on the front of the ship, but he's got like a big old map and he's like trying to read it, and he can't really understand why it's so hard because it's like blowing in the wind and it's whipping back and forth.
Buddy.
So he's like he's trying, and then his hair is also blowing in the wind. So eventually he like pulls that back and like tucks it into the headband. It looks like we're still on course, I think. Kind of just like cut off, like sleeveless shirt that's again whipping wildly, and then some otherwise not necessarily well kept clothes. Yeah, that's Jonit.
And yeah, we see Jonit's map for a second, and then he pulls it away to show the countryside before the ship. We can see the long masthead stretching out in front over green, rocky mountainsides with rivers scattered around them, and very far off in the distance, miles away at this point, we can see the silhouette of a city. Jonit turns back, shouting instructions to a man who's leaning over the side of the ship, trying to crane his ears to hear the excited young boy's cries. He turns around and then calls, with a lot of swears, I guess, with a lot of swears and linguistic shorthand, he calls back orders to Travis. What does Travis look like, and where is he sitting?
I have a quick question. Speaking of swears, what is our swear policy on this show? In old campaign, we used Star Wars swears. Can we just? Are we just going to make up Skyjack swears?
Let's make up some Skyjack swears.
I think we make up Skyjack swears.
Yeah.
Cool.
And as far as our season, it is unfortunately winter.
That's cool. So Travis is sitting on kind of like a bench along the side. Mm-hmm. He looks to be in like his late 20s, early 30s, but his hair is stark gray. And he's wearing what was probably at one point like a pretty nice slick suit, but it's just definitely a little shabby, a little worn for the wear. And he's, of course, wearing some fingerless gloves.
Yeah.
Incredible.
After hearing that order, you know, Travis, especially as someone who was not originally trained to be on this ship, mostly your job is running orders that cannot be heard across the ship. Mm-hmm. And because this is an order of heading, it needs to reach the ears of the captain, which means you need to bring it to someone else who's part of your conspiracy. Mm-hmm. So whom do you run to first with this order?
I'll run to Gable.
We see Travis cross the deck of the Uhuru. We can see dozens of men and women pulling on ropes, moving about large items on the deck, making sure everything is secure, and some of them running over to the side of the deck to grab coats as a chill fills the air the closer they draw to this city as you enter part of the world where winter is currently in season. You make it over to Gable. Liz, please describe Gable.
Looking at Gable is kind of like looking at the magic eye. In total, it makes sense, but if you look at any part of Gable too closely, it doesn't make sense. They're a little bit too tall, a little bit too slender. Their skin seems as if you can see through it at sometimes. Overall, if you're not paying too much attention, Gable just looks kind of like an early 20-something young woman, but sometimes not. They have long, silvery braided hair that's all coiled up and tucked into like a really neat bun up top, like wrapped around. And they're wearing a very sensible, heavy leather coat that kind of distracts from how off-putting it is to look at them in the first place.
I also think probably important for folks to note, Gable is 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So Gable, including all of this magic eye stuff that sort of distracts anyone that would be looking at them, Gable is also just a tremendous physical presence.
How tall is Travis?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, 5'11".
Yeah.
We had to install a lot of pool noodles along all of the ceilings, like whenever you enter a room, so you don't bump your head.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring this heading to Gable. Gable
bends down to here.
Yeah, exactly. You know that the heading is true, and that probably within an hour or so you will be upon the city, which means that you have to take this information to the captain, and that means you have to take this information to Dref.
I think Dref is probably
I'm with the captain.
Yeah, with the captain. But like down below, maybe?
I think in the captain's quarters.
Yeah.
Is probably.
I walk down. As stated before, everything is very narrow and short down below in the ship. So my preference is to not be down there. So I walk down the stairs and knock on the door of the captain's chambers and say very loudly and overcompensatingly, "Yes, Captain, I have some information for you, the Captain, Captain Ormar."
Dref hears them outside and says, "Yeah, come in."
I open the door and go in.
Yeah. Inside the captain's quarters, we can see a lot of trophies from life around the shipping lanes running across the sky. There are weapons, there are fine silks, there are some interesting looking baubles and rocks. There is quite a bit of alcohol, and there are a few human bones. But we also find in this haven of finery aboard this ship, which is mostly a utilitarian vessel, we see, looking a little bit out of place, Dref. JPC, what does Dref look like?
Dref is about 5'8". He is human, blonde hair, but it's shaved very close. He's about 19 years old, and he has the beginnings of a beard and a mustache that will never be a beard and a mustache. It's all just very sparse and thin. He's very gaunt.
Oh.
He's probably about 20 pounds underweight. You can see kind of his sunken eyes, sunken cheekbones. He looks like he probably hasn't slept in 3 days, even though he has slept in 3 days. That's just a look that will never go away from him. He's wearing this thick, white, heavy coat that has a chest piece on it with tons of little pockets in it. People would know it as something that a doctor or some sort of surgeon or medical practitioner would have.
Is it stained a bit?
Oh yeah, it's stained. It's
Gross.
pretty dirty. There's blood smears, but not bloody. It's just he would wipe his hands on it. Sanitarily, we're not really in a time where that's a big concern for people.
Yeah.
He's also got glasses that have that wraparound thing to it, so they don't always fall off his head because he would lose them. Exactly. He is currently hunched over Captain Ormar Vale. Ormar's kind of sitting there, staring straight forward. He is holding Ormar's jaw in his hand, which has completely separated from the bottom part of his jaw is completely separated from his mouth. Ormar, by the way, looks very much human, looks very much alive, but is very much missing his jaw and doesn't appear to be worried by it. As Gable comes in, Dref turns, "Don't worry, I can fix this. This will be fine. I can fix this."
What do you mean you can fix it? It's not attached to his head.
Yes, and I can explain that.
What did you do?
I had to take it off.
Why?
Because it wasn't. It didn't look. People would know, and so. But I can fix it. I'll put it back.
Yes, it looked worse than it being off.
It's part of. Yes. If he were to smile, it would have looked like. He just wouldn't smile. I will put it back together.
Put it back.
We'll be fine. Through a combination of divine and necrotic magic and some like fish gut and like actual practical like sewing things, he's like in the process of sewing the jaw back on and then kind of putting on like this magical veneer to kind of hide the fact that this is obviously a corpse that has been reanimated.
So I would like for you to make for me an average difficulty medical check.
Oh no.
Okay.
Back in the saddle.
Yeah,
again.
there we go.
This is the first roll.
Be back in it, and I know exactly how to play this game. That is 1 success and 1 threat. Yeah. Is
So-
it still called a threat in this system?
These are unreadable.
I believe they are still called threats in this system. I think because we've all been using the other system, we're going to start out that way, and maybe we'll look it up later. Probably not. I think your fix for this situation involved taking some muscles that you pulled from a fish and using those to replace muscles that had rotted away in Oromar's jaw. The problem is they're a little bit weak, and once the muscle catches and actually like wakes up and starts moving, it pulls the jaw together more firmly than you would expect. So while this looks good, the mouth has a tendency to hang open, and when it closes with that.
Yeah.
So it might be a bit of a noticeable tick that Oromar did not have before, but Gable you'd have to admit that it does look natural again.
Also to say, since Oromar is dead and is a reanimated corpse, he has lost the ability or the capability to speak. So any sort of like jaw movements that he makes, Dref's plan is to keep them as like minute as possible. So this like opening and closing of the mouth thing is like not good because it just kind of draws attention to the fact that he won't be saying words, but he's opening and closing his mouth.
Captain!
Wait, can you do this first?
Captain!
I can do it.
Yeah, so Dref like finishes up. Can Dref give the captain orders? Like, how do I? What skill do I use to like command him?
How do
I
zombies work?
think for most circumstances, as simple commands, you will not have to roll for. If you are trying to convince someone that this is a living person ever, then you will have to roll for it. Really, if it is narratively appropriate for it to be challenging, it's going to be challenging. And in that case, I think you would be rolling your divine skill because you're using your necromantic magics to control this body.
As Dref finishes like masking this jaw thing, he tells the captain, stand into your maps. And Oromar like stands up, places his hands like on the table and like looks intently at a map with his back to the door.
Yeah.
Who is it?
It would be Wilson.
What's the update, Wilson?
No update, ma'am. Just looking to speak to the captain is all.
The captain is busy checking his maps. I can pass along any information.
It would be real helpful if we could have this conversation on the other side of a door, ma'am.
Are you discussing this with me? Are you trying to have a negotiation with me?
I was trying to have a conversation with the captain. If you are the barrier to that conversation,
Well, then,
Gable, it's fine.
Then-
He should be mostly. I don't think anything will slip out.
yes, you can come in.
So Wilson walks in. He looks to be a man in his later 30s. He's a bit rotund. He's got a scraggly beard, a scar on the side of his face. But apart from that and his sort of cracked and calloused hands, he looks like a gentle soul. And he enters fairly meekly. His expression is a bit worried, and he looks around the room. Captain, feeling all right, he says to Dref, who, you are someone on the ship that people are happy to have, but rarely happy to see. Being a medical practitioner, if you were in the room with someone, it could be a dire circumstance.
Dref says, oh, yes, the captain, feeling wonderful. At that, the captain kind of like, I think actually, can I roll like a simple divine check here to see if I can get the captain to reinforce this? Yeah, that is 2 successes and an advantage.
Yeah, the captain sort of like slowly for a second looks up, but then as though it's going through a program, nods in like a sort of reassuring way.
With my advantage, can I make it so the captain give Wilson a little wink as well?
Yeah.
That's something I've been training the captain to do because it's something that Ormar did when he was alive. He was like very, very like socially savvy, which is also a problem for the fact that he can't talk anymore.
So with that, you can see Wilson visibly relax. So we drew straws and I came up here because some of the men and women are a bit concerned about the fact that we don't have any cargo. And we was hoping that we had news about picking up some cargo at this port, maybe. And we just wanted to see if that was the expectation. Seen a few ports, unloaded some cargo, which everyone appreciates, I'm sure. It's just that if we don't negotiate to pick up new cargo, we don't make any money. And that's how we eat.
Well stated, Wilson.
He sort of like relaxes. You can tell he is physically intimidated by Gable in every sense of the way, especially because you are now like looking down over him inside this room where you basically scrape the top of the ceiling with your hair every time you're walking around.
The captain is like kind of hand like grabs like a stack of papers and then hands them to me. Oh, excellent. Yes, Captain. Wilson, the captain wanted you to do a thorough inventory on what we still have left in the holds so we can know what we can accommodate with a new shipment.
Of course. I'll get this down to the people in storage right away. Thank you, Captain. Dref? Gable?
Thank you, Wilson. You're doing a wonderful job.
He does like kind of an informal salute and leaves the room with those papers to take them to the cargo hold, leaving Dref and Gable alone together to contemplate what they've known for months and Wilson has just given voice to. The captain has not been able to negotiate picking up new cargo, which means slowly the ship has been getting less and less profitable to the point where you've essentially been running on fumes.
We can't keep giving them busy work.
I just don't know. I don't feel 100% confident with the captain leaving the ship in order to, he can't, and he'll never, I'm close to.
You've been close to something for about 6 months now, and I don't mean to raise my voice at you, but.
You're whispering? Very, you're not raising your voice.
I don't mean to get upset, but we are reaching the end of our rope, and we need to make some decisions. And I don't want to push you, so we can make all these decisions together, but we need to make them very quickly. Otherwise, we will not have a ship.
Travis, I would like you to reveal yourself to be very close by to this situation.
Sure.
Are you just outside the door?
I was actually thinking of storming in.
Oh, great. This is perfect. Yeah.
I want to warn you that William's coming, and I think he's got some questions about the cargo.
Wilson already came.
Wilson, that's it. Well, he had some questions about the cargo, and I just wanted to warn you.
Well, it's a little bit late, but we did give him a little bit of busy work to do. We're still not at a place where the captain can make negotiations despite having several months of preparation. We think we would be there by now.
What do you mean? He can't negotiate? Look at him. He looks so real, so lifelike. Isn't that right, Captain?
Look what he
His
does.
mouth hangs open and then he closes it with a click.
Okay, I propose a meeting, a team meeting.
We're here.
Well, Jonet isn't here.
Well, someone should go get him.
Go get
and
John.
since I was just outside, I think that it should not be me, and it should be someone else who was just outside.
I stick my head out the window.
You stick your head out the window, and then you already see like a pair of larger than appropriate sized boots like storming down the stairs. And then you see Jonet come down, and he's walking across the way, and he's like, "You guys are having a team meeting, aren't you?"
No, we
are.
We didn't mean to. It just happened.
I need to be in the room when you have team meetings. I'm
Close
part
the
of
door.
the team.
Close the
That's
door.
exactly what I said, Jonathan, and they weren't listening.
Stop talking about the team meeting. when no one knows that there's a team?
Well, then start informing me when there are going to be team meetings.
We didn't know that there was going to be a team meeting.
Oh, well, keep it that way.
Okay.
Travis takes the captain's hat off of the captain and puts it on. I will propose once again that I think I should perhaps be an acting captain as far as negotiations are concerned. I can wear the clothes of the captain, pretend to be the captain, and
The situation that is before us is the captain is dead. Okay, we
know.
all are aware of the situation, but as we agreed, it is imperative that we keep the captain alive in some capacity. The captain certainly opens many doors for us.
and his mouth.
In his mouth.
Did you see the new thing that he does?
As I will not, and I have to admit this as a failing, be able to give the captain any capacity for speech.
So he's never going to be able to talk.
But he can still be useful to us. We just have to figure out a way for someone else to speak on the captain's behalf.
Oh, like someone to act as the captain and wear the captain's clothes and negotiate as if
You
they
don't
were
need
the
to wear
captain.
his clothes.
That's definitely me. All right. I was the first one to notice when the captain was dead, and I called dibs on the ship. All right. So this ship is mine. I'm the captain. Give me that hat.
Dibs.
Thanks for the hat.
So
Dibs notwithstanding.
one of the things that sort of strikes you with Jonit's outburst and Travis's insistence that he be the captain is that Jonit is the only one with dark skin like the captain. Even if Travis were to wear the captain's clothes, if he were to try and assume the captain's identity, it's probably not going to work out. Though undeniably, Travis is probably the most skilled in negotiations of the group.
Before we claim dibs, before we call shotgun, we need to discuss what our goals are. We've been riding around the skies for 6 months, just pretending that everything was going to reveal itself once we figured out what we wanted to do. We are at a point of no return. What do we want to do? Do we just want to keep on picking up cargo for the next eternity? Or do we want to do something?
We need money. Wilson was correct. We are running low on supplies.
Yes.
Food stores are low. We have credits and debts that we need to see to.
Yes.
The fact is that we are desperately in need of a job.
All right, that's a good short-term goal. Does everyone agree?
What if we just, what if we find a griffin nest and capture a baby griffin? Those things sell for a whole bunch of coin.
At the mention of a griffin and a griffin's nest, Dref has like a very audible gulp that is, he like stifles down how terrified that makes him.
That's another possibility, maybe a more long-term possibility.
James, what town are we headed towards?
Wolf's Tooth. It's a kind of remote area, and the reason that you're going there is it is farther from the influence of the Red Feather Syndicate. You being privateers and not being officially licensed to move cargo or even own a airship means that you can't go towards major settlements unless you drastically change the look of this vessel. That was thankfully a call that Captain Oromar made and not you, so most of the anger is already directed towards a dead man, but you're still dealing with the fallout from that.
Can I roll a knowledge check to see if I am familiar with any of Oromar's contacts in Wolftooth?
Absolutely.
What is the difficulty there?
How long have you been on this ship?
I've been on the ship for 2 years, since I was 17.
I'm going to call that, I think it's hard.
Hard? So is that 3?
That's 3.
Okay, cool. Even shot here. Oh no. So that is, okay, correct me if I'm wrong. These are the failures,
The
right?
X's are failures and the little targets are disadvantages.
These are, and these are advantages, not successes.
Yeah, the success symbol is the same, but the advantage symbol looks like a Star Trek thing.
Got it. I failed this check, but I got 4 advantages to it.
All right. I'm going to give you the opportunity asking for an intervention from a luminary, because as it stands, you will not know any contacts that can help you. You will know people that he knows, but that might not do it for you. You could come up with a contact, but it's going to be up to interpretation from the luminary card. card.
I will flip a luminary for this.
So doing that, we get the Maiden, which is actually really good news for you. The Maiden is almost always on the party's side. So you do, in fact, know a contact in Wolf's Tooth. In fact, you were in a meeting that the captain had with this contact a long time ago because you were stitching up that contact.
Oh.
There is a local businesswoman known as Sonia. She controls a lot of different cargo moving in and out of Wolf's Tooth, although there is not any official guild that controls what comes in and out of the town. Someone still needs to oversee which ships can make port there. So Sonia is the one that folks tend to go to. And you actually are owed a favor by her. Where the failure comes in, though, is that although you had a good interaction with Sonia the last time you encountered each other, it didn't end well between Sonia and Oromar. Oromar was a lot of things, and one of those was a philanderer.
Oromar, no.
Yeah. Sonia was furious the last you saw her when you were pulling away from Wolf's Tooth Port. You don't know what that could be.
The good news is, if we're going to be making port in Wolf's Tooth, Sonia, who is a big name in that port, could help us facilitate with a contract. The bad news is that she and Oromar here didn't part on exactly the best terms.
He cheated on her?
Sexual
He cheated on her?
Nature. Yes, I believe so. But that won't be a problem going forward. For I haven't worked our way for his penis to tumescent to engorge won't fully.
No, we don't want. We don't.
Magic.
No,
it's possible.
It's not. No.
I'd like to listen.
We're not getting.
I mean, with time, I could, but not before we make it to port. And
We're not. I'm telling you right now, Oromar is never going to engage in sexual congress from now on. You don't need to worry about that.
Okay, I'll put it on
Well, I think we should bring it to a vote.
Are we, whether or not we're going to allow the captain to have sexual relations?
And not necessarily with Sonia at this stay, but at some point in the future, I think that we should set out some ground rules now as to whether or not the captain will be allowed to.
There are practical reasons why it could be advantageous to us, but just purely from a standpoint of keeping it would be very difficult to achieve an erection lasting longer.
Just so I have all of the information before we do cast this vote, what is the probability of, if sexual congress were to be able to take place, that the captain could impregnate someone?
No.
And then would the baby be part dead already?
That would be.
A zombie
That'd
baby.
be cool.
I agree. It would be very cool.
I don't think that would be cool at all.
So, Gable,
for that to work.
you have been opening yourself up to new ways of thinking for the past long time. So there are a lot of things from your previous life that you're sort of willing to disregard. However, there comes to a certain level of heresy that stretches your nerve to the very end, and you're sort of feeling a bubbling rage sort of rise up in you as Travis very casually discusses some horrific things.
All right, so maybe we take a step back and just say, not even particularly this zombie, but who would be in favor of at some point perhaps getting bussed by a zombie?
No.
I'm out.
Not this zombie in particular.
We are going to talk about this contract, and that is it. There are many bridges that you have yet to cross, and I don't think theoretical discussion is a good thing to be doing at this moment, and also, it's gross.
To be clear, I couldn't do that. I don't know how. I wouldn't know how to.
Well, don't
I'd get bussed by a zombie.
No,
then.
say stop it.
To make him bust is I wouldn't know how to. I would affect some sort of
Stop.
facsimile of semen. Could
My
be a ring.
vote is no.
Okay, that's one no vote. Thank you for your participation.
I think, Liz, I would love to see some sort of intimidation made.
Tell me how.
I believe coercion is on your character sheet. Yeah, it's one of those versus one purple die, and I would like to add a blue die because you are so very tall.
All right. This is a failure?
That is a disadvantage.
Disadvantage.
And the little triangle thing cancels it out, so you just got 2 straight up successes.
2 successes.
2 successes. So I think when Gable says no, their voice thunders through the cabin and they bring a fist down on the captain's table full of maps. Some of the baubles on that table rattle, and it's not even a rattle with a pounding of the fist. And Travis, I think this is what disturbs you most. It's a rattle that their voice has when it resonates with the other objects in the room. The room fills with this command. Although you delight in stringing people along and teasing, you viscerally want to stop in this moment.
Okay. We will vote on whether or not the captain will bus anyone later.
May I make a suggestion? Wolf's Tooth is at the very periphery of society. Sonia, while very important there, has relatively limited dealings with the wider world. I know that I have been hesitant to suggest this, but I think Wolf's Tooth is the perfect place to test my theory that the captain can exist in public. Now, that being said, he will not be able to speak, so I by all means, am not the right person to speak for the captain, so I think it should fall onto your shoulders to communicate with Sonia. Well, I do my best to make sure the captain maintains a relatively human and alive persona.
Are you suggesting using the captain like a puppet, and you'll make his mouth move and one of us will say the words?
No. I am suggesting that the captain takes a strong, silent, and lets his crew speak for him. He may even have appointed one of us as his negotiator.
Mine sounds more fun, but yours makes more sense.
It does make sense. Will we all go to meet Sonia?
I would, yes, advise that. Gable, you would be useful to be there, as your presence is somewhat commanding.
Say it.
And intimidating.
What, intimidating? More.
You have a tall aura of you. I should be there.
Handsome. Are you attracted to me?
We can see sweat forming.
I should be there as well to maintain if anything does go wrong with the captain.
And now say good things about me.
Travis, I believe we will need you because you have a certain knack for dealing with people.
Oh, me?
Are you attracted to Travis?
That's not a no.
And John, I believe that
I'm a natural leader.
I was about to suggest
Then it's
the
settled.
same.
You'll give me the captain's hat and we'll touch down.
But might I make a suggestion? The captain, as we all know, was very generous with the love that he had to sexually give specifically to women.
This is why we should have voted.
It's not unheard of that the captain may have had
Many dalliances in Wolfsbane. All right.
and potentially children.
Oh.
It may be something that we have not been in Wolf's Tooth for over a year. If maybe one of the captain's sons came aboard the ship, we could use that as an opportunity to have the captain have a new mouthpiece as he is training one of his children to take on his stead.
I gotta pretend to be the captain's kid?
This is a suggestion.
Looking Jonah up and down, what do they see in you? This is, I think, the first time that this group, or maybe even anyone aboard the ship, has looked at you in an appraising way, apart from when the captain first looked you over before taking you on as a hand aboard the ship. You've been on the ship for how long now?
Not very long. Jonet's kind of been bopping around, probably pretty close to like around the time when Oromar actually did die. It was like it feels like maybe like a couple weeks after he got on board.
Okay.
And he was just kind of like, he's gotten into this inner circle just kind of by being the guy
By being
in
the
the
person
room.
who is at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So yeah, when they look at you now, a 15-year-old who mostly had a job of spotting things because your eyes are better than most of the older folk on the ship, whose job really for a long time has been learning basic things. I think you've settled a little bit into your role now. So what do they see when they see you?
Well, the first thing that you see is that he's got like a rolled up map kind of like tucked into the belt loop in his back. So it's just kind of like it comes out, but it also kind of highlights how like small in stature he is. And like the rolled up map is kind of the same like size of like his small arms, but he is, especially in this moment where he feels like this is his time and like sort of like his ship, he's very determined. So at the opportunity to pretend to be the captain's ship, he's like pondering it over, like he's trying to do it like he sees like the adults doing it. It's like, oh yeah, yeah, I could be that guy. And then so right now he's very much like, all right, let's give me the captain's hat and we'll touch down. He's got his fists on his hips and he's like ready to do it like we've all agreed on it, but we kind of haven't yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of earnest excitement, willingness to please in there, and perhaps about the eyes, some hunger, some ambition.
Gable bends down to get face to face to Jonnet.
And as she does, and her face gets like larger and larger in Jonet's eyes, he kind of like leans back a little bit more, but then eventually he runs out of places to go. So he's just like making eye contact.
And just quick question for Liz. Is there a defined pronoun for Gable or
Whatever is useful.
whatever people use is fine?
Yeah, whatever
Okay.
is useful.
That makes sense.
So like whatever the context is, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So Gable turns to Jonnet and says, "Are you comfortable? We're not going to make you do anything that you don't want to do.
I want to do this. He gives her a thumbs up.
It's going to be dangerous. It's going to be frightening.
I can do this. All right. I'm going to prove myself and I'm going to show you all that I deserve to have this ship.
Okay?
And as a general warning for all of us, well, you have certainly given me leeway with the necromancy that I've practiced here. I would remind you that it is somewhat frowned upon in the wide world, so it is going to be imperative that we all keep this secret about the captain to ourselves. If something were to happen that would betray his true nature, we all have to be on the same page with protecting that secret.
Done.
Keeping in mind that the captain is still very useful to us. If it were to get out that the captain were dead, we could be faced with a crew mutiny. We could be faced with our debtors coming after us in full. We could be faced with the loss of the ship. The captain must remain, as we all agreed, for all intents and purposes, alive.
Yeah.
Fine.
I guess I'll return my captain is dead banners that I just purchased.
You purchased them?
No, I was being sarcastic.
Oh, because I was about to say you could probably make them. You're very crafty.
I was going to ask where you got them printed.
Yeah, exactly.
At that, you can hear calls from atop the ship. Port ahoy! Port ahoy!
And I guess I didn't get the music fade out on that one. But that was the first half of episode 1. We'll take a quick minute here in case anybody has any like production questions that they have, or just want to dwell on some things. I will say that I completely forgot how wild the introduction of the captain and necromancy and busing uh, was. Let's see. James, do you think you'll ever write a campaign setting book? I'm going to say that's a 100% yes. We're sort of trying to figure out how we want to go about a task like that. I have a lot of responsibilities as head of the One Shot Network, and writing, is not like a simple thing, especially something like a setting book. There's there's a lot of detail. There's a lot of different things that we'd want to touch on, and we have to decide what parts of the universe we're going to focus on for setting books. One idea that we've had sort of behind the scenes and we're going to be testing soon is, rather than writing a full book and publishing it right away, to sort of get things rolling, we'd be writing small, like, setting snippet zines. They wouldn't have full book production values. They'd probably just use art that we have for campaign from other projects that we're doing with it. But we'd maybe explain something like how the luminaries work in one book, or have one book dedicated to Ire Piora, or maybe even have a book like dedicated to the race in Ire Piora and whatnot. Um, so they'd be like small things that we would sort of lay out and compile, and maybe they'd be $5 or $10 a piece. We'd figure out exactly how much that would cost, but down the road it would mean we'd have all of these zines with the material put together, and it would be a much simpler operation for us to start putting together an actual setting book. Obviously a setting book is going to have a way more art. It's going to have different layout and different production values and stuff like that. So it's not like we'd just be reprinting the zines as a book, but it would be more like you'd have the information from the zines, and then the setting book would expand on that greatly and provide you with like all sorts of other bells and whistles. But it's one practical way that I think we'd be able to accomplish that. Let's see here. I'd love to see maps of the world. I know that's a very big commitment when you lock down geography. Yeah, that is one of the things about it. Especially like one of the things that I think is kind of at the core of Skyjacks is that it is based on folk tales and folklore. And part of that is a at least partially undiscovered world. I think even if we put out a setting map, it would just be the map that the Uhuru crew has access to. So I would be saying essentially this is not a full and complete map of the world. This is just what the Uhuru crew knows. I think we actually had a little bit about that in explaining maps with Jonnet when he's beginning his Star Watcher training and whatnot. So that's kind of what I would be committing to that. Um, let's see here. Oh gosh, I hope I can scroll in this chat window because I don't want to miss any questions. Boy, it would be cool if my mouse would behave right now. Okay, that's close enough. Let me do a little bit more stretching here. Okay, yeah, Zine for the bird race. People are excited about that. Are Luminaries a Genesis thing? I've never played with the Genesis system, but I think Luminaries are really cool. Luminaries are not a Genesis thing. They originate from a card game called Illimat that was designed by my friend Keith Baker. Um, Illimat is a fantastic game, and it was actually a collaboration between Keith and the Decemberists, because the music of the Decemberists was like a core inspiration for this world. We also took inspiration from Illimat itself. Um, we're sort of approaching the point where the setting and like the world of Skyjacks is growing pretty far beyond that original inspiration, and there's a chance that we might be renaming things soon. Luminaries are one of the things that potentially will get renamed, just because Keith and I love each other, respect each other. We talked about including Luminaries before the thing, but as I want to start doing things like setting books, there might be a necessary separation there. Well, we'll be discussing it a little bit more at Gen Con. But we might be renaming some things, but that core inspiration will always be, a big part of it. So the luminaries came from Illimat, but their meanings and how we use them in the world of Skyjacks and Sphere is completely, something that came out of the campaign podcast. We did take inspiration from the music that originally inspired them, and even more than that, the folk tales behind the music that inspired Luminaries. And we sort of tried to have a holistic view of the symbols that popped up in those. So it's stepping outside of even the stuff that the Decemberists were originally playing around with, and approached the territory of, okay, well, what exists in general folktale storytelling, what exists in like adventure and genre fiction that we're drawing on, and how do we create these symbols. So all of the like tarot style meetings there sort of evolved out of the original inspiration that we had from those sources of inspiration, and our needs for the world and the folk tales that shaped that world. Um, so the way we use them in Genesis, like those are new rules. If we were to do something like a Skyjacks inspired role playing game, we would be defining what those rules are. We sort of took the positive and negative points that the plot points are. I actually can't remember even what Genesis calls them. We replaced that system with the Luminaries system. Um, let's see here. Yeah, so I kind of explained that. Let's see. Yeah, I made up like meanings for the luminaries, but not the luminary cards themselves. So like in Illimat, there is a card called the River. Um, and it's based on the December's album Hazards of Love. And in the Hazards of Love album, um, let's see, in the Hazards of Love album, a river like drowns this couple that's in love, and also drowns a terrible man who kidnapped one of them. So I sort of like took what that sort of means, and I was also trying to like combine, okay, well, what does a river mean generally? Like in the Skyjack setting, all water is dangerous, so there has to be something sinister about the river. So it all got tied up in that stuff, and that's kind of how I produced the meaning. So the meanings behind them are like original work, but the fact that there is a river card, and the fact that that card is like associated with Decemberists' music, that is something that is more tied in with Illimat. Um, let's see. How much of raw audio does Casey edit for the podcast in this campaign? And are we going to hear some of it in a bloopers episode? So the bloopers for this campaign are an interesting thing. I do have a file of Skyjacks bloopers. Sometimes for some episodes I will pre-edit things to send off to Casey. There are frequently I will do something like forget Wendell's name, or need to patch over something before I send off the recording. In some recent episodes we had to record things in two different sittings, so I kind of had to splice that together before I sent it off to Casey. So when that happens, I save bloopers to the side. Otherwise, I'm trying to leave some bloopers audio in so that Casey can use them for our little intro sections to each episode. That's an element that Casey came up with that I really like. So yes, you will get bloopers. Usually when Casey is editing out a blooper, it will appear at the front or back of an episode, sort of like the Dick Spiders bit. It's so weird to have said that in like a normal, casual voice. The Dick Spiders bit? Um, let's see here. Let's see. My husband says you lie at the end of every episode of Skyjacks when you say that Skyjacks was inspired in part by the Decemberists, when you really need to say that you're a very big fanboy. Well, I am a huge fan of the Decemberists, but there is actually a lot more going on than that. Like if you look at the sort of stories that show up in Decemberist music, uh, it wouldn't make for compelling like role-playing fiction. You might be able to do a storytelling game that sort of top-down perspective looks at a folktale, but you're not getting in a lot of sword fights in Decemberist stuff. That is, the core of that comes from adventure fiction, like Treasure Island's vision of what a pirate is. Uh, and that's something that I have incorporated into the Skyjacks universe. Is this is not just a universe that has like this sort of oppressive and desperate world that you would hear about in a Decemberist song, where there are sad sailors who are scraping to get by and always oppressed by higher classes and whatnot. Because that to me doesn't scream role-playing fiction, or the type of role-playing fiction that I want to do in podcasts. So what we do is we take that base world and we layer over it this adventure fiction genre. So, like, thinking of pirates and what pirates actually were, they sort of struggle a lot, and they're getting scurvy, and they're out on these long voyages, and once in a while they do something terrifically exciting, and the rest of the time they're sort of desperately sort of scraping by for their lives. If you look at Pirates and Treasure Island, they are having sword fights, they're going after buried treasure. So we basically, the way Treasure Island sort of amped up the reality of what pirates are, campaign sort of amps up what the sort of mood that you get with Decemberist music by turning it into adventure fiction. um, I have a question about how the captain was developed. Was it your idea? Was the idea from you, James, or was it JPC's idea? How did that develop? Well, we actually recorded the session 0 that we did with the group. It's like 4 hours, and the audio is not super great. I will be releasing it at some point, but right now, session 0 contains a ton of spoilers for the series and like some of the meta plot stuff that's going on. So I'm not in a position where I can release it. But as soon as we've sort of laid down the foundation work and like given out the facts that we put together in that initial session 0, I will put that out. So I might get corrected later as people can actually hear this. I think the captain was originally JPC's idea. But it was kind of a collaboration thing because JPC knew straight off the bat the character concept that he wanted was a necromancer, and specifically a necromancer who used necromancy for medical aid, to provide medical aid to people. And I think because nobody on the main cast wanted their character to be the captain of the ship, I was like, well, the ship needs a captain. So what if you are keeping the captain alive through necromancy? So there's no way I would have introduced that element without JPC's ideas. And like that's sort of building on his. It, at the end of the day, kind of every idea that we have on the show isn't any one person's idea because we're collaborating and building it together. We all have equal share in what we create, IP wise, together. So, we couldn't do any of this without each other, is I guess the thing. If griffins weren't originally a thing, how did they come to be? So let me clarify. Giant birds were always part of the setting. That was one of the requests that Liz made in session 0, is she wanted giant rideable birds, and I thought that was super dope. But when Tyler says, let's go get a griffin egg, we hadn't worked out that we call the giant birds in the settings griffins. So there was a non-zero chance, like I said earlier in the chat, that griffins were going to be like griffins in normal fantasy stories, like half lion, half bird creatures. And as the game went on and we sort of got a better idea for the setting, it it made less sense to have griffins like the traditional fantasy griffin in the setting. So I just was like, okay, well, we have these big birds, so we could call these big birds griffins. And in my head, I was like, oh yeah, like griffin is a lion bird, so we're just applying that naming logic, and like the thing that you call big birds is lion birds, or griffins. So that's how that came about. Uh, when you forget Wendell's name, do you call him Wandel? No, I call him Willem. I call him Wilhelm. I call him things that sound very little like Wendell, apart from the fact that they have a W. Um, are there other big animals or just birds? I know that there are leviathans and sea monsters in the setting. I don't know what they are like yet. One of the upcoming arcs really needs to confront them with some of the dangers of the sea, so we can establish more of that stuff. But yeah, there are other weird big animals. Um, love all these Dick Spiders tweets. No sad sailors here. How long had Skyjacks been in planning before you finally got to do it? So we started working on Skyjacks a couple months prior to Gen Con last year. Like, if you go back through our Twitter timeline of when we announced the new cast, uh, like it's probably a month or so before that. Um, we hadn't recorded any episodes by the time we got to Gen Con, I don't think. But I had recorded those setting teasers. So yeah, I'm gonna stick to a couple months. That is the thing that I am most comfortable stating here. Um oh great, so that didn't pick up any of that chat stuff. The chat is going by faster than I can answer everything. Let's see here. So yeah, we like before it premiered, I had the first 3 episodes recorded, and by the time it premiered, I had the next 3 episodes recorded. We have been ahead of schedule on Skyjack's recording for a very, very long time. We're still several weeks ahead right now. Um, let's see. Yeah, extremely cool concept. Props to JPC. Yeah, that dude rules. Um, Liz said I'm going to give everyone what they want. Don't know what that means. I owe Liz Anderson my life. Yeah, yes. Yeah, Liz Anderson is great. Um, let's see here. I was also so happy to hear that there was a bearded vulture in the race. They're my favorite bird. How did you come up with the bird stats when choosing birds to use? Uh, so this is one of those game design things where I didn't balance it. I was just like, if this bird seems tough, it has more endurance. And seeming tough could be a lot of different reasons. And I tried to use real life bird stats. If this bird, you know, is a fast bird, it should be faster in the race. I tried to balance the birds who were in the top group, but in the follow group, I don't know that things were particularly well balanced. That race, I had like 10 different things that I was trying to juggle, and I only accomplished using them some of the time. My big concern was, okay, let's keep this moving and let's keep the action happening exciting. The follow group was supposed to act a lot more, and I was actually planning on pulling a luminary for every round of the race, and I think I only did it for 1 round in that race. Also, I was okay. No, I already did that. It's John's background. Wailing my parents. Bunch of good whale bits. I'm currently writing up a character in D&D, and now I know exactly what their background is. Whale like my parents. Very good. Very good. Those parents might even still be alive, living inside the whale. Do multiple sessions go into one ep or the other way around? So the way we record, we usually record in 4 to 5 hour sessions, and out of those, we usually get 2 to 3 hours. Well, uh, 3.5 to 2.5 hours of raw audio. Those will edit down into uh, 2 or 3 episodes. So we take 1 hour of play essentially, and there might be, a little bit of chatter, or, we're recording a deer uhuru or something that gets cut out of that. But, um, you know, 45 minutes to an hour is generally how long I want episodes to be. And we don't cut much from them. Like there is a little bit of and stuff that gets cut, but mostly you're getting a lot of the raw audio there. Um, so yeah, one recording session will produce multiple episodes. Let's see here. Vulture, Ortholos icon. Ha 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 ha. Wow. Uh, when everyone said nobody likes a goose in one of the races episodes, I was sad. I think everybody has a lot of experience with Canada geese, which are mean birds. They're very territorial. What's the hardest part about GMing this game? Um, Gosh, I don't know that there is much that is difficult about GMing this game. It's one of the most enjoyable gaming experiences that I've ever had. Everybody in the group is really on board for what they're doing. They're all producing these buck wild ideas. I'm constantly impressed by the new things that happen in each episode and the performances that people put in. I guess I do have to prepare for things more than I do an episode of One Shot. An episode of One Shot, I can sit down and just go. I don't really have to plan or prepare anything because all of the stakes get left at that table. Like the Kids on Bikes episode, we holistically created that universe and our concept for that game in the 2 sessions that it took us to run it. So I didn't need to bring anything to the table because I knew we would invent it all there. But, for campaign requires stuff like this bird race, or it requires like the upcoming negotiation for the feather weave, and that negotiation needs NPCs. And those NPCs are probably going to have to come back in some way. They're going to have long-lasting agendas that focus stuff around the setting. So I don't want to get anything wrong, and things like the bird race, like it has to feel meaningful and important to the setting. So there needs to be a structure for it. I need to build rules around it. I can't just fake all of that because then I feel like that limits the amount of choices that my players can make, and their choices are one of the real strengths of this game. Like I can't do that without them. Um, what is your favorite color of nail polish? Let's see here. I do have my nail polish box sitting next to me. I really like this one. It is called Glowy Rose. It is dope when you layer it with, let's see if I can find it. Yeah, with this one, which is called Let's Get Digital. Uh, Let's Get Digital is like mostly clear, even though it looks kind of teal. So it layers on with like kind of a sparkly borealis layer to whatever you combine it with. So it just looks dope. Um, who's your favorite NPC to play? Oh, I do love being the broker. The broker is a character near and dear to my heart. I explained this on Twitter the other day, but the broker actually was a Shadowrun character that I played with Gannon and Mike when they were running Shadowrun together before Neoscum started. And at that time, Mike was still playing Dak Rambo. Uh, so the broker, in his Shadowrun form, used to hang out with Dak Rambo. Dak did not like him because he was a weird little nerd. And like the way I wanted to play him is that pretty much everything he says is off-putting, and not off-putting in like, oh, you're a creepy way. It's like, oh man, you're such a buzzkill nerd kind of way. So he would do this thing where he would like affably agree with everybody around him, but his take on agreeing with people would make them feel less excited about the things that they liked. So Dak Rambo, being this weird pervert, would have this character like take his weird perversion and go, "Oh yes, that's absolutely fantastic." The way I experience that kind of pornography is very different, though, and that would like take Jack's enjoyment of that away. So it was wild to play a low status character who was constantly taking the wind out of sails of like a super high status, unbreakable character like Dak Rambo. Um, so like that version of the broker was an assassin who was trained by a program of elite assassins, and he still dressed up like a big bird. Like he had this weird cyberpunk take on the weird bird costumes that the broker wears. But he was ultimately a low status character with all of these eccentric traits. And one of the things that I wanted to do with the broker when I took him to Skyjacks is like put him in this position of power where people couldn't dunk on him. Like the broker is an important person and he'll still take these low status positions, but he controls a lot of resources that you might be interested in. So like you kind of have to accept him for who he really is. It's an interesting thing. I like taking a low status character like that who occupies a low status space and doesn't feel bad about it, and put him in a situation where he is powerful. I keep using the he pronoun for the broker. I think the broker might be a he they character. I don't think they've grappled much with what gender means to them. But the broker is really cool, and I love playing the broker. Um, so yeah. Also, I am not 100% that the broker that I'm playing in Skyjacks isn't the same broker from the games that I used to play with the Neoscum crew. Uh, I don't know what that means. I don't know how that would work, but I'm leaving that creative window open for myself should I ever need it. Um, James dubbed over his original voice for Tiberius. Yes, I definitely did. Tiberius had a just kind of a normal voice. I was really dissatisfied with it. Um, I wanted him to sound menacing. I wanted him to sound cool, and I had that high status British accent. Um, so yeah, I did dub over the voice. Is Tiberius hot? Wow, y'all are too horny for Tiberius. Tiberius is bad. Um, but I mean, probably, right? Like, so much of our audience is attracted to Tiberius already, so I guess Tiberius confirmed for hot, you monsters. Um, let's see here. Were there any times a player's reaction really surprised you and made you have to rethink what you were planning to do? Huh. I mean, countless. So many times. Travis. Travis deciding to gamble over the feather weave. Like, Johnny completely surprised me with that. And it shouldn't have surprised me. It was so in his character. But, it took the game in a completely different direction that was going to be a simple, straightforward negotiation where I was putting this huge, wealthy prize in front of people. And I'm like, okay, they're going to walk away with a fraction of this. So I don't have to worry about them getting a world changing amount of money out of this deal. And then, of course, Johnny made that deal, and we played out that hand of Illimat, and that was that. It changed literally everything. Like Ire Piora, all of this, that all came out of Johnny's original choice to offer to gamble over the Featherweave. Um, why did you have to make Tiberius hot now? Because now I stand him and I hate it. I'm sorry. That's the audience who made Tiberius hot, so you can't blame me. Do you always record in person over some kind of Skype call? 90% of our recordings are in person. We have not had a single Skype recording yet. That may change soon. Tyler might be doing a job in LA for a couple months, and Tyler loves the show. He's going to stay on the show, and we're just going to do remote recordings. So that'll be coming up. Hopefully, y'all won't even notice that that's happening. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, everybody's here for hot Tiberius, huh? Um, let's see here. Honestly, Skyjacks Neoscum crossover when? Who knows? Wink. Um, okay. Yeah, I definitely do want to do some setting swap stuff on the One Shot Network generally. So I would love to do crossover stuff. I mean, we have it, and it does not take as much work for us to cross things over as it does for, like, Marvel movies and stuff. Uh, it is a thing that would be extra work for everybody involved. So crossover stuff might be stuff that we would kickstart. Um, I'll excuse me. I will start working on that probably in 2020. The 2019 episodes of One Shot require a little bit of extra work and attention, so we might get to that at some point in the future. I know I'm interested in doing it. I've talked to a couple different people about, maybe doing something like it, so we'll figure it out. Okay, yes. I will answer 2 more questions before I hop back into the episode. You knew what you were doing when you made him evil British, James. Wow. Gosh. Audience, you can't be this predictable. You can't. This is exactly what happened with the Magnus Archives. Oh no! Oh my god! Well, I mean, everybody in the Magnus Archives is British, so you can't blame them for that. This is more my fault, in this case, than that was ever their fault. Yeah, Tiberius Elias conspiracy. Who knows? Do you have a rough idea of how long Skyjacks is going to run, or is it open-ended? So, whew. Skyjacks has a definite ending. I see us very much in the first act of the Skyjack stories right now. The first few arcs are setting up parts of the world so that both our audience and our players understand how things work and how things move. In Act 2, I really want to see the players make big decisions. Once they leave Ire Piora, with whatever resources they leave Ire Piora with, I will leave a window open for them to lose everything because they could fuck this up. They're going to have some big decisions to make. And I still need to introduce a few things. We need to see mariners, in the setting. We need to see, sea monsters and stuff. There are a couple, NPCs and factions that I've alluded to that need to show up. But once they show up, the PCs can start pursuing whatever agendas they have. And I will be weaving the meta plot line into those stories. And Act 2, will be them moving chess pieces how they want to move them, which will cause Act 3 threats to come in. And, I know what the crew of the Uhuru has to do. So we'll see if they get to the point that they can do it. Let's see. All right. So yeah, those are our questions for part 1. I'm gonna queue up part 2 now, and yeah, we'll just keep going with it.
And there's a lot of sort of excitement. And Gable, you know that this means, especially because Wolf's Tooth is a smaller port, that someone needs to be sent down to negotiate pulling in. Mm-hmm. In certain cases, that can mean rent. So they need someone to take a bird down. And they'll probably be looking to you.
Okay, so when we hear the port ahoy, mm-hmm. Jonnet very much perks up because he knows what's about to happen, and he knows that you're about to get on a bird and fly down, and he thinks that's so awesome. So he's just getting really jazzed about that.
Gable hears it and then just looks at them, gives them a little smile, the only smile that they've smiled today. And then once again jumps out the window because I think all the birds are in a little hatch on the bottom of all the ships. Yeah. So I swing down and then kind of selectively go through all of my racks of beautiful big birds.
Yeah. We have you go out the window over the side of the ship. As you swing down, we can see the bottom of this ship. And when we do, we see lots of holes from various cannon fire that have been patched up. We see arrows sticking in the side of the ship, mm-hmm. some harpoons, various different kinds of weaponry that you've just not had time to remove and repair. And we come to the avian cages. Mm-hmm. Liz, what does the bird that you're selecting now for this trip look like?
So I think I have 3 separate birds for my purposes.
I think, 3 birds that could possibly carry you.
Yeah, there are, and they're like for different purposes. Like one's definitely a warbird for fighting and like diving, very much one of the more raptor like, and then there's one for speed, and then there's one for showmanship. And I think I'm doing the one that's for showmanship, and that's probably going to be.
I think it's a peacock.
Oh, peacocks can't carry a 7 foot tall.
Well, I mean,
yeah.
no bird. Liz,
That's the thing that's going to get me caught up and take me out of the.
Yeah,
how many birds can carry people?
that's not. So yeah, it's a giant.
This is a large peacock.
Yeah, it's a giant peacock. And
I think Oromar is exactly the type to.
Yeah.
Unless you had a better idea.
Oh no, that makes sense.
What if it's a white peacock?
Yeah, a nice, beautiful white peacock. And what am I calling it? What's its name? I think they all have human names for sure.
Luke Cage.
I think this one is called Lucas for sure.
Lucas. Oh, I love it.
Lucas, my fancy bird.
We can see in the shadows of these cages that are sort of like at the bottom of the ship. You're on the outer edge of this cage, and like you can see a head just sort of pop in the jerky, quick movements that birds tend to make around the corner out of the shadow. And it gets a look at you, and we can see its beautiful white plumage.
Beautiful.
It sort of lets out an excited squawk.
Oh.
And you open up the bottom of this cage. It swings open. And how do you mount this bird?
So the birds will just like drop down like they were bombs and like start floating. And then I just hang from the cage itself and kind of aim myself and just let go and land.
Yeah.
Straddling.
In those few seconds between when you land on that bird and when you let go of the cage, I think you close your eyes because it feels like flying. And then the memory is gone, and we can see the bird flying away from the ship. And now, for the first time, we see in full relief the Uhuru. And I'd like us to describe the ship. I think everyone, I would love to see one detail added after this description. It looks like a large galleon ship. However, instead of sails and masts for that matter, there are 3 large engine heads on the ship with coal-burning engines that spit fire from their top. Above those, we can see a large balloon shape for these white sails that each have a red stripe running down them. They fill up this striped balloon as it floats down towards the earth, but I'd love to hear more about different things on the ship.
I feel like Jonet has kind of taken advantage of this already, where it's like normally at like the front of a ship you might have like some kind of like decoration, like a statue of like a lady out front, but this ship had one of those. It was blown off through like some encounter that it had eons ago, and instead it's like the mermaid lower half of this thing. The top half is completely blown off, but it's just done it in such a way that it's kind of flat enough that Jonet is able to like sit out on the front. And that's his map.
That's so cute.
So yeah, we get the camera like sweeping into that area of the ship where we can see Jonet perched there, like peering at the horizon and watching Gable swoop down atop Lucas. Yeah,
I'm sorry. The ship has no formal like weapons on it, like for any sort of like ship-to-ship combat.
Ooh.
What it does have is it has these 2 like massive pieces of machinery on that. Each one of them, they're like gunnery cannon in look, but they're like full of like gears and mechanisms. They have like a swivel so they can rotate, and they're on either side of the ship. Each one of them has like a 3-pronged kind of like ballista bolt that can hook into the side of other ships and shoot lines, so that in-ship combat, the ships we could like basically hook into another ship and then board their ship by sliding down, or climbing these ropes to the other ship. Something that Dref is deathly terrified of, but he knows about it only in the way that he gives those machines a wide berth when he passes them.
The hull and everything is it wood? Are we gonna say it's wood? I think.
Yeah.
But I think along the bottom there's kind of a ridge that's made of some kind of metal, and it's sort of toothed ridge, so that if need be, if we're not looking to board a ship, we can kind of fly over it and scrape. If we scrape the top of their balloons,
it's grease.
puncture them.
Oh, it's grease.
That's cool.
Oh, I love it.
Oh wow, yeah. So it's like a below the ship battering ram balloon. Yeah.
Just cutting that rules.
I will also say that probably the reason why that is so effective is because the material that the balloons is made out of. What did we say that material is called?
It's called featherweave.
It's called featherweave. Featherweave, not only is it like lightweight and allows for to trap air so that you can rise, it's also very strong. So traditionally, like if you were shooting like bullets or anything less than huge cannon fires, it would be very hard to pierce this material.
I like it. So I think this ridge has a lot of nasty, gnarly teeth and ridges on it. It looks like a really rough saw almost. Very cool.
I think we mentioned before one of the reasons we need to land is possibly to change the appearance of the ship. I think it's because in a recent run-in, on the side of one of the sides of the ship is a huge lewd drawing, painting that one of our enemies left on there. Or like a bunch of pranksters. They didn't even fight us, but we screwed someone over in a trade deal, and so they just scrawled in huge paint something disgusting, and we have to get that fixed immediately.
They drew a taint.
Yes.
And you can tell it's a taint, even though it would be hard without any other details. People look at that and go, oh, that's a taint.
So we're not going to describe what it looks like in any way at all, but know that 95% of people looking at it would be like, that's a taint. You use your imagination for what you think it looks like, but it's immediately discernible as a taint and not confused with anything else.
And band artists, I'll say that's only on one part of the ship, so you can always draw it from the other end.
And just to be clear, there's no penis, there's no vagina, and there's no butthole.
No
it's
butthole.
just a taint, and you're sure that it's a taint. And no labeling. There's no words on it that says taint or gooch or any of the other names for what's the other?
The perineum.
The perineum.
You're the doctor.
If you've never seen a human body before, even if you were just birthed yesterday, you can look at it and say, yeah, that's a taint.
Yeah. Really, that graffiti artist should be commissioned for it. It's actually a work of art.
Yeah. I hope they're doing good things with their talents. So we come to port. I think we're going to cut right as the ship is pulling in. Gable, there was a negotiation. And although you did not manage to speak to Sonia herself, just her representatives, you did mention that the Uhuru was looking to pull into port, and they seemed all too eager to accept the invitation. It made you suspicious, but also, you'll take what blessings you can find where you find them.
So there wasn't a docking fee or anything like that?
No, nothing like that.
That's weird.
That made you a bit nervous, but you've got larger concerns on your mind, specifically finding work and food. So the crew of the ship are starting to unload what little cargo they have. A few of the lifers have already headed off to the tavern to spend what little gold they were afforded on alcohol. The rest of you are now left by the captain's quarters waiting to unfurl your plan.
As we are waiting, are we in the captain's quarters still?
I think there might have been work done, but like if Dref is planning on unveiling the captain and making this public thing, I think at least you and Jonnet are getting ready to do this. I don't know where Travis might be or Gable was off the ship, but I feel like you might come together.
I think we're maybe standing outside of the captain's quarters because Dref is very excited that the captain is
Finally coming out.
is dressing himself right now and preparing himself.
Oh no!
They've been working on this, and Dref is pretty confident that the captain can follow the command to get ready and get ready.
A father at a school play. Oh, we're so excited.
I think Travis is in his quarters, wherever they may be, sort of trying to spruce up as best he can, kind of slicking his hair back, adjusting his suit, making himself look as presentable as possible.
Yeah, the idea of quarters on this ship is actually something I think that we need to address really quickly, in that most of you, those who are not in a privileged position that maybe Dref might be, most of you are sleeping in hammocks that are lining the cargo bay of the ship. You might be more territorial than others, but I think Jonnet, for instance, just takes whatever hammock happens to be open when he needs to sleep. There are some more privileged folks who are skilled in negotiation on the ship who might have their own hammocks. Is Travis one of those people?
Yeah, I think Travis has sort of like a corner hammock. He was able to.
I think you won it in a game.
Yeah. And what he's done for some privacy is taken like a very lovely sort of silk kind of sheet and hung it up around the hammock. So you can still hear everything. And honestly, you can see through it pretty easily, but it's like.
How long has Travis been aboard the Uhuru?
Oh, that's a good question. Not that long, I don't think. Maybe 6 months.
Okay.
So you also came on right around the time the captain died.
That's. Wow, what a great coincidence. Yeah, so I want to know what Travis's area looks like. How have you decorated it apart from your sheet?
He also has a very fancy pillow. It's still a hammock on a ship, but it's a very fancy pillow. Pretty nice blanket for what you would expect. Some pictures on the walls and a little mirror to just shave and get ready,
I think also swinging off the line of this hammock, we see an Illimat box that looks very worn from years on the road.
Yep.
I'm interested in those pictures, but I think I want to cut over to Dref. Is anyone else with Dref awaiting the captain's appearance?
Yeah, Jonnet's just posted up on the wall, just he doesn't have a watch, but he's just clearly tapping his feet. He's how long is this going to take?
I'm trying to take more of a hands-off approach. It's going to be suspicious if I'm always seen with the captain. So if the captain can function independently and follow simple command, as he's talking, you hear a loud bump, a rattle, a drop, and then silence. As he functions more independently, it'll draw suspicion away from me. Eventually, the plan is to have the captain to be able to walk the deck without my need for intervention. I have high hopes that this will go very well.
You're sweating a lot. Are you always this sweaty? I feel like I've seen you be sweatier, but you have a baseline of just a damp pool.
Yes, I'm just a sweaty person.
Okay.
Gable jumps down. Jumps down the ladder and says, "Well, we've organized the meeting with Sonya, and most of the crew is gone. I think now is the opportune time to make our move. Where's the captain?"
Dref goes to knock on the door, and as he does that, the door swings open. Can I roll something to see how well the captain has done?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can give you the option of rolling or pulling a luminary.
Let's pull that luminary.
Yeah.
All right, so the luminary that we got is the children. The children themes are consequence, inevitability, and eternity. This can favor the PCs by suggesting they will bring judgment. It can also threaten the PCs by suggesting that their crimes have been noticed.
I think that's definitely, this is a threatened situation that their crimes have been noticed. The captain is wearing everything correct. He followed the orders to the letter. He's got his coat. It's got a long tails on it, kind of like a ruffly shirt. He's got his saber and his dueling pistol at his side. Everything looks very proper. I even trained the captain. He has a big black mustache to have waxed his mustache so that his like mustache is waxed and curled up. He's wearing his hat, his feather. He looks impeccable, except at some point, somehow, probably when we heard that like falling and tussling, his neck has snapped and turned. So he obviously looks like he has a broken neck and is dead. But he's standing like in front of us, like hands on his hips. He's even got like a little like smirk, like a grin on his face.
He gives that wink.
Yep, and he gives the wink. Yeah.
No. We rush him inside.
I can fix this.
Close the door behind us.
I think based on this, the broken neck is going to be a lot more complicated to fix than you might have time for. But thankfully, all it really needs is to be stabilized.
Well, so it's wintertime, so it's expected that it's going to be a little colder, and the captain has furs.
Yes.
So while he can't totally fix the neck immediately, because that will take time, he does his best and covers it up with like just like a big fur shawl around like, or a big fur like jacket around the captain's neck. So it's not as noticeable that his neck looks snapped.
Yeah.
God.
I will say this fur looks incredibly noticeable. I think the outfit that you had picked out for the captain was very dignified and like sort of projected this air of authority. It's, I think, one of the things that Dref silently thought, given the captain's resources, he would always be able to dress better. And this proved it. This fur is very incongruous with the rest of that outfit.
Yeah.
And it shows, but also that neck is not wobbly, so it will be useful.
Mm-hmm. The process takes refinement. This is a trial run. We will. I think we'll.
We don't have a choice. This is what we're going to have to work with.
So the captain climbs up the ladder and kind of like for the first time in a long time is out on like the main deck of the ship.
There are some more. I won't say that the captain has a particularly loyal crew. I think Oromar in his prime ruled through authority and fear more than anything else. But there are men and women aboard this ship who look to the captain as a source of authority. Seeing the captain emerge once more, they're comforted because in the last few ports, the captain has not left his quarters at all. And that was a cause of worry. Campaign Skyjacks is a one-shot network production. For more information, be sure to follow us on Twitter at @CampaignPod for updates about live shows and other events we might be doing. You can find more great gaming shows over at oneshotpodcast.com. Like Warda. Warda is an original fantasy actual play podcast created by Ali Grauer and Drew Merzieski. It's 1 part Game of Thrones, 2 parts Downton Abbey, served on the rocks with a twist of Agatha Christie. Discover magic, mystery, and more than a little socio-political commentary along the way. The city holds thousands of stories. What will yours be? Jonnet Kessler was played by Tyler Davis, who can be found on Twitter at Tyler A. Dave, on Mainstage with Second City, or at I.O. with Devil's Daughter. Gable was played by Liz Anderson, who can be found on Twitter at
Liz Anderson ____.
Comedy Sports Chicago with the One Woman No Show. Travis Madigo was played by Johnny O'Mara, who can be found on Twitter at Johnny in Briefs or on his podcast Dilettante Ball. Dref Wormwood was played by John Patrick Cohen, who can be found on Twitter at JPSoFly, on stage at I.O. with Devil's Daughter, or on his podcast Hey Riddle Riddle. I am James D'Amato, your host and game master. You can find me on Twitter at OneShotRPG or on my other podcast, One Shot. The original music featured in this production was composed and performed by Arnie Parrott. You can find Arnie on Twitter at ARNEPARROTT. And you can find more of his work at ATPtunes.com. Our logo was designed by Fiona Hisea, who can be found on Twitter at
That's Fiona Shea.
Fiona Pup. The world of Sphere was inspired in part by the music of the Decemberists and the card game Illimat, property of Together Studios. The role-playing game used for this production is a modified version of the Genesis role-playing system designed by Fantasy Flight Games. There are no kings. Take flight, heroes.
So that was episode 1, folks. Looks like question time came back a lot sooner than I thought. I will answer a couple more questions. Um, and if the chat is up for it, I prepared episode 2 because episode 1 and 2 premiered together. I could keep that going if that's what we want. But first, somebody said that they had dangerous questions. So if you had like any question, just write it at me in the chat, so I'm sure that I can find it. Um, yeah, and let me tell you, there is definitely universe and plot meaning to that little send off that I have at the end of every episode. It's not just a cool thing that I said. Um, Gosh. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer more questions. Hello to the people who are just joining us for this Skyjacks Streamcast mini marathon. We might do more stuff. Oh yeah, you'll have to wait for the lore, but it's important. You should start looking at the universe through the lens of that being an important thing. Um, yeah, for those who are just joining us, we might make this a regular thing. It has been extremely fun hanging out with people and like experiencing these episodes alongside other people. Uh, I am like a huge nerd and listen to things like audiobooks and audio drama and like all sorts of different stuff. Like I've listened to that for a very long time, like growing up. And there have been very few people that I've been able to listen to stuff like that alongside. And it's one of the big joys that I have in life is sharing the experience of listening to audio drama and podcasts alongside other people. So um this was super fun to do, and I've had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, some of you might need to go to bed. That's fine. um let's see, question coming in: will there ever be guests? I know there are some guest voices already, but I mean people actually playing a session with the rest of you. Yes, I do plan on having guests. I that one of the difficulties is scheduling it. Tyler's schedule up until fairly recently has been difficult. Tyler is working a lot, and the work that Tyler does is pretty much exclusively performance work, which means it takes place in the evenings because it's all live performance. And Johnny has a traditional day job, and Liz sort of bounces from traditional day job spaces to non-traditional day job spaces. And me, I run the network, so I can be available whenever. But so right now, like, and JPC also has a day job and performance things on top of that. So it's hard to get everybody together, and adding a guest on top of that is kind of really difficult. So we're had a little trouble negotiating that, but we definitely will have guests, and I'll definitely be putting some people in Skyjack stuff, maybe without the main cast or just a couple members of the main cast. We'll figure out all sorts of things to do with stuff like that. So yes, the short and the long answer is yes. Let's see here. Um, let's see here. The feeling I get is that sea level is like a black hole. If someone falls off an airship, they're just gone forever. Is there life and civilization at sea level, and we just never see it on screen since the Uhuru is an airship? Um, Half yes, half no. An interesting point is that Bujanith is actually at sea level. They have built that massive seawall to keep out the water itself, and they're also doing some other stuff that we might discover fairly soon. Um, but there are not a lot of port cities. And the port cities that do exist are kind of very embattled and besieged from a lot of different perspectives. water is dangerous, and most places that are very near water are tough places to live and get by. Um, so, excuse me, I got to reorient myself because my back hurts a little bit. So yeah, water just makes life really difficult. And we're hopefully going to be seeing a lot of different kinds of communities soon. But there are also deserts in the Skyjacks universe. There are plenty of places inland that, the only water they're threatened by are rivers and lakes. Um, so I won't say that the ground and sea level specifically is a big black hole. Water is very, very dangerous though, and pretty much everybody who lives near water kind of pays a bit of a price for being there. Um, it makes me incredibly happy to know that Tyler is so busy with performance stuff. One day I'll get to Chicago and see some of y'all's shows. Yeah, Tyler Tyler is so great. Like I've only got to watch him live a couple times. I really want to make time to see a Second City show. He's just such an incredibly genuine and passionate performer. Like, you got to make sure you see him. Uh, See a Devil's Daughter show here if you can, because that's not just Tyler. Like, JPC unfortunately left that team, but it's still people like Brad Pike on there. There are a couple one-shot regulars that show up on Devil's Daughter shows, and they're all really, really good. Um, let's see. I'm hoping we get a Skyjacks appropriate version of Binbon and Jubna. Yeah, that's kind of the stuff that I'm thinking of. Like, I want to take one-shot personalities and, see what their take on characters in the Skyjacks universe is. Like, I've gotten all of this really juicy lore from freelancers that I've hired to flesh out the Skyjacks universe. For those that don't know, I hired freelance writers to make setting contributions to Skyjacks because I want Skyjacks to feel more multicultural and more kind of, I guess, well rounded as a setting than I alone as a creator can make it. Like at the end of the day, I am a white dude, and even though I'm collaborating with my whole cast of intersectional personalities, there's only so much that PCs that are actually playing the game can contribute to a setting without like really getting behind the scenes on some stuff. So I hired freelancers to create different locations and setting elements, and I want to get to those. And I think one of the quicker ways to get to those is running some sort of Binbon and Jubna stuff where we can introduce those setting elements. Um, I have a question for OC purposes. Would formerly expensive Port City Beach estate property be abandoned enough for someone to buy a lot for real cheap? Yes, I think absolutely. Uh, they're like Boujanith is an incredibly lucky city because they figured out a way to survive, and there are some large capital cities that just duke it out with the Mariners, but some smaller and mid-sized cities completely fell prey to rising sea levels and the mariners predations and all of that. So yeah, an OC can definitely buy up a huge amount of seaside property that is very fancy buildings that carry the risk of maybe getting attacked by drowned sailors. um I love that a lot, actually. um let's see. Is there a convenient book I can read where I can learn more about your technique for storytelling and world building? Well, gosh, it's funny that you should mention that. I recently finished a book called The Ultimate RPG Gameplay Guide, and it is a deep dive explanation of the techniques that I use when I am telling stories at a gaming table. It it's in three sections. The first section just sort of breaks down how role playing works and different forces that might be at play that you might not immediately think about that have an immediate impact on what you do. The second section gives you kind of like advanced techniques that you can use, knowing that base level of information. And the third section includes exercises and game mechanics that you can bring into your gaming table to sort of aid how you play and practice what you learn in the book. So if you like Skyjacks and you like the way that I run Skyjacks, there's a way to get my perspective, and that book is going to be out on October 3rd. But it's available for pre-order right now, and actually, if you pre-order, it's a huge help to me because it makes the bookstores and whatnot order more copies, which means I get paid more. You can go to bit.ly/RPG gameplay or bit.ly/ultimate gameplay and pick up a copy. The first link, the bit.ly/RPG gameplay, that's a general link that will bring you to a bunch of different retailers. The other one is an Amazon Direct one, which I don't like Amazon, but as an author, I'm kind of at their mercy a little bit. But however you want to get that book, if you get that book, it would be a huge help to me and a great way to learn. Next question. Are all bodies of water dangerous, or are there differences between an ocean, lake, and river? So I have not decided to which degree things are more dangerous, but water generally is pretty spooky. Like, I think a well is a scary place. I do think lakes and rivers supply their own kind of danger. It's not as bad as the ocean, but it's still pretty bad. It's the sort of thing where I think there are people that still swim, but you would never swim alone. Never. Um, there are also things like the Liquid Swords Monastery knows a little bit more about water than other people, so it can vary from place to place. I want to see Allie and Drew in the Skyjacks universe so bad. Yeah, I do too. Those two are going to do great things with it. Eventually, I will probably hire them to do some freelance stuff for the setting. Um, I'm the first opportunities that I'm giving are to marginalized people and people from marginalized perspectives. But after all of that, I will engage in some folks who maybe are from more privileged backgrounds, but I think would have a real handle on the setting. And Allie and Drew definitely fall into that. Let's see. Uh, Also, do people still eat fish? Yes, and there are still fisher people. There are still people that will go out on the water. What they're doing is very, very dangerous, but they don't really have a choice. Um, let's see. How expensive is stuff like pearls? Oh, pearls are wildly expensive, especially because the sea's all weird and evil now. I think they have like magical qualities too. The pearl diving, for those that don't know, is kind of a low class occupation from different like historical settings. It's because it's an incredibly dangerous thing to do. You have to hold your breath for a very long time, and there's such little chance that what you're going down for is going to pay off. So you have to dive very frequently, and just holding your breath too often can kill you. It puts real strain on your lungs. You can't do it for very long, but it can have kind of a big payoff. And if you have no other choice, like, you might have to be a pearl diver. Obviously in the past. So that in Skyjacks is just like tenfold as a danger. Um, what are your thoughts on Adventure Zone campaigns? I'm so distressed waiting for new Amnesty episodes. I friggin' love Amnesty. I don't think it's a popular opinion, but I like Amnesty more than Balance. I really, really like the Adventure Zone generally. And Ango is probably my favorite character of all time. But what they're doing in Amnesty feels so much more elementally close to who the McElroys are as people, that I'm just excited to see them develop this setting that is so closely tied to who they are. So I really love the story. Um, Let me scroll up because I am missing a tagged question, and I don't want to miss those. Um, are you okay with people making headcanons about how the world works? Like, for example, I am obsessed with what I call fantasy biology. So, would it be okay if I were to think out how the massive birds exist, or do you have thoughts on this yourself? Um, so, ultimately, I do plan on releasing a Skyjacks world book at some point, but I think something deeply elementally important to the world of Skyjacks is that it is folk tales. And folk tales have a similar feel from place to place, but they are different from place to place. So your sphere might be different than my sphere, but they're no less true, if that makes any sense. Like, obviously, we're going to be publishing stuff that will be the quote unquote truth, but it'll be the truth for Campaign's version of Sphere. Ultimately, this is a role playing product, and the audience that consumes it has to have a great deal of agency and control over a role playing product for it to be, successful in what it does. So, yeah, I would say go for it. Think out how those biologies work. Come up with ideas. If you come to me with something, like, I will say I will have to solicit you for it. You can say, hey, I have an idea for this thing, in an email to me. uh, would you hire me to write about this thing, and maybe we can have a conversation. Do not send me unsolicited ideas, because that can create legal trouble, and I will probably just have to throw it out and not look at it, and that would make me very sad. But you know, like, your ideas are going to be accurate for your version of Sphere. When there is a world book, when there is some sort of role playing game thing for it, you're going to need to be empowered to be able to make those calls. So I'm going to try and structure the universe in a way that allows you to do that, in good faith. Okay. From Big Damn Artist. When you say that water is dangerous, is that just because of the, I'm gonna forget the lore, but ghost pirate that you mentioned in that one episode? Or is there something more intrinsic slash magical to the nature of water and sphere now, that is more dangerous than it used to be? The answer to both is yes to both of those questions. The Mariner, is part of what makes water dangerous, especially the seas. But water has its own kind of dangerous quality. Like, people obviously still need to drink it, but it's that thing, like, there are very few sources of safe fresh water, and there are some people who believe that fresh water carries a curse. So people are consuming wine and beer and different fruit juices and whatnot to survive, because water is just not nice. And there are big sort of metafiction behind the scenes explanations for all of this and why this is happening. And I think there are a bunch of people out there that I've seen that have pretty good ideas of why things are the way they are. But yeah, we will discover that as the story unfolds. What's the relationship between the Red Feather and the church? Are they affiliated in any way, or do they not like each other? Or do they care about each other at all? Um, I think they are both affiliated and probably do not exactly like each other. Uh, so, I mean, this is fiction that will make its way out there at some point. So I'll talk a little bit about this. I'm not even going to call this spoilers. This is just back lore for the setting. The Church of the Slain God, before the stars fell, was the old church. I believe I've alluded to that in both the little setting things and some episodes itself. Um, After the stars fell, there was a major shift in that church to become the Church of the Slain God. But before, it was like kind of a normal religion. The big distinction was that the priests would travel with sailors. And they would travel with sailors so that they could evangelize their religion and introduce it to new areas. Um, and the church kind of became the most popular religion on Sphere, simply by virtue of the fact that the priests would travel around and try and spread that religion. But Then an apocalyptic event happened that wildly changed the world, and people looked at this religion that they had, practiced in good faith, and this terrible thing still happened. And they wondered why. And the church kind of had to shift how it operated. And the prevailing thing that came out of it is that they believe that their God is dead, and that the bad things that are happening are because people killed the God with their sins. Um, so, it's sort of like a twisted mirror version of Christianity. It's not God died for your sins, it's God died because of your sins. So, the church has a lot of Christian stuff wrapped up in it, like Catholic Christians specifically, that I from a Catholic background, that is, picking up on a lot of the unhealthy parts of that religion's history. Um, anyway, they because they are so populous as a religion, and they exist through evangelism, they kind of still depend on red feather ships in order to operate. But red feather can't like ignore them because their priests have influences at every port imaginable. If the church were to declare red feathers heretics, or something of the like, it would be bad. It would be very bad for the Red Feather Syndicate. Um, is similarly, the Red Feather Syndicate, if they were to cut off air travel to the church, there would be massive problems. So they're two big entities that kind of have to tolerate each other. There are no nations anymore. There are no real super powerful world governments. So these are kind of the two superpowers that are both butting heads and depend on each other. Um, so there's an interesting political tension there. Is that real, holding your breath, an IRL thing? Yes, yes. Like pearl diving specifically, you do increase your lung capacity. Like people who do pearl dive have better lung capacity than most humans, but if you do it too much too frequently, you're depriving your brain of necessary oxygen. So there can be bad medical complications if you continually do something like that. Thankfully, pearl diving is not as bad as it has been traditionally. So we don't have to worry about that. We farm pearls now. Uh, but especially back in the day, pearl diving was a very dangerous occupation. Um, I think maybe this has been covered before, but to what degree is magic common knowledge for your average spear resident? Is it mythic and rumored, or just a fact of life? Both. Magic is inspired by magic and folk tales. So, think of like folk beliefs and superstitions that are culturally held all over the world. It is common knowledge like that. Uh, but there are very few people that practice it. Like just sort of like tarot cards or even astrology. People know of it. People know generally how it's supposed to work, but there are very few practitioners that like use it or utilize it in some ways. And magic in the setting, it takes sacrifices. And as we saw with Jonnet, uh, dealing with the civility, like nailing those nails and feeling it in his back, there are dangerous repercussions for spells that don't go exactly right. So it's a sort of thing where it might not be uncommon for you to run into a magic practitioner in a city. There might be one or two in a smaller settlement. Um, and there might be a few spells every year that people decide to do on their own, ritualistically, on holidays and such. But generally speaking, people probably don't casually use it because it's hard to do and it can go wrong. Um, let's see here. Is the perception or precipitation different from bodies of water on Earth? Do people collect rainwater because they know it's safe, or is it scary because it's just as bad as earthly water now falling on everything? Um, I think clouds and rainwater are the safest water. I think young water is better. The sky, like the setting sort of meta fictionally, and you'll see this in a lot of how different things work, is water and bodies of water are dangerous and terrible. Life on land is hard, and life in the sky is free. Uh, so, water that's in the sky is probably the best water that you can possibly have. Water that just came from the sky is the second best water you can possibly have. Um, let's see. Yeah, I very much like Oglaf and the god Sithrak, the god that hates you. Yeah, yeah, very, very close. I love Oglaf very much. Um, do you personally enjoy drinking a maelstrom? I do. It's got a lot of flavors that I enjoy. Um, I'm still working out on a variation of a maelstrom that is my favorite to drink. With the maelstrom and its recipe right now, I think it's good but not perfect. But I have made myself maelstroms casually a couple times now and enjoyed them a great deal. Um, as a Catholic who's hanging on to the faith by a thread of cool aesthetics of the Church of the Slain God appeals to me so damn much. Yeah, I have a lot of my cultural history is informed by Catholicism. I am Irish Italian. Those are some pretty traditionally Catholic, you know, nationalities. And I have a lot of family that's in the church, and I don't necessarily approve of everything that happens in the church, or a lot of things that happen in the church, and I got complicated feelings about that. So the Church of the Slain God is specifically a worse version of the Catholic Church, sexual assault aside. I can get into that more later, but the sexual assault is not something that will appear in the Skyjacks setting, or even really be alluded to. So taking that stuff out of it, like the colonial days, the Renaissance days of the Catholic Church, they did a lot of bad, messed up stuff, and even the modern church has done a lot of bad, messed up stuff, and a lot of that, and a lot of the cool visual elements of the Catholic Church are very present in Skyjacks because it's something that I'm emotionally kind of like working through in my own cultural history, and I think it makes for compelling storytelling. Um, let's see. Oh, is there any possibility for a release of non-alcoholic version of Skyjack's drinks, Maelstrom et al., etc.? Yeah, I think we can do that. One of the things that you lose in non-alcoholic drinks is the woody flavor that comes from barrel aging liquors, but I have had this wild idea of barrel aging water, and using that to make like mocktail drinks. I haven't done it yet because like it's work to do it, but I would really like to get around to doing that at some point. So um, I will try to come up with some mocktails, because we need stuff for our poor baby Jonnet to drink. Um, let's see. So could some power be allied with the church slash red feather and enemies with the other at the same time? Yes, absolutely. I'm sure that happens fairly frequently. Both the red feather and the Church of the Slain God have their way of pissing off people. They are, the embodiments of colonialism in the setting, and colonialism is bad. So they're big villains. Um, let's see. Someone's being called away. Goodbye, good night. Let's see. Is Fey magic slash curses intrinsically tied to animals, or is it more of a stylistic thing on the part of the offended Fey? For example, could the snake instead have been a furniture from Beauty and the Beast? Oh, okay. So I have not confirmed that Travis's shit is Fey shit. Um, Luminaries and we may be changing the name of luminaries at some point. Luminaries are kind of their own thing, and not all luminaries behave in the same way. The explanation that I gave in the little setting primer recording of the old Skyjack explaining luminaries is very much it. Some of them are like beings that have agency and behave a lot like human beings, sort of like the queen, or the rake, like they sort of act like they are gods, like gods that would be from a multi theistic like pantheon gods, like Greek gods. They have a lot of like folktale-y sort of personality and whatnot. Some don't behave like that at all, but they still like have human form. Like the soldiers are sort of like ghosts, and some are kind of abstract concepts that make their work through magic. So like they are related powers, but they're not exactly related powers. And the power that they have does take different forms. Again, the way that I'll put it is it's like folk tales. And how some folk tales, some cryptids, some monsters, are very person-like, and some are very ethereal, and some are just, curses. Um, that's the best way I have of explaining it. So maybe there is a luminary that has the ability to turn people into objects. I do know that there is a specific luminary that has the power to turn people into animals. Okay. Hey James, big fan of your work on the One Shot Network. Keep doing good work. Oh, thank you very much. Let's see. You can get barrel aged root beers and things. Yeah, that is true. I might do something with that. What you drinking? This is just an old fashioned Coca-Cola. I need the energy. Let's see here. I will say, as a witch who works mostly with fae stuff, that stuff is wild and complicated and could mean anything. Yeah. What in the world did the fishing industry and other sea-based industries do when the water went bad? How did that change? Also, how badass is pearl jewelry now? Uh, there are going to be some cool, spooky people who wear pearls. I can guarantee you that. Um, so after the stars fell, um, like it was a near apocalyptic event. There a lot of population was lost, but people did survive, and people struggled to survive after that. And before the stars fell, in the time of nations, like we were approaching an era of colonialism. Colonial powers were just starting to explore, but they really hadn't done a ton of damage yet. It was mostly sort of we're trading on foreign shores. Like the colonial atrocities that we think of in our real world hadn't occurred yet, but they might have occurred. Stars falling sort of prevented the spread of colonialism, in that it was so dangerous to travel across the water that nobody was going to risk it for foreign trade. They pretty much wanted to maintain whatever powers that they had acquired. Um, and sailors, I took like an old Viking belief that if you stayed within sight of the shoreline, you would be okay. And to a certain extent, that is true in the Skyjack setting today. Like, fisher people, generally speaking, try to stay within sight of the shore. If they do that, the water isn't too dangerous. Like, a storm can always show up, a maelstrom can show up and blow you off course, and then you're in real trouble. But if you can see the shore, you're basically okay. So they would do that, but that had a limited scope. Um, and sailors eventually discovered that all you had to do to go over open water was appease the sea. make small sacrifices, do small ceremonies, things that on ships, we would think of as superstitions, sort of evolved into quasi-religious practices. And for a time, everything was fine. In fact, it seemed like the colonial powers that had taken a real hit after the stars falling would be able to spool back up and start, spreading again and colonizing again. The thing that they didn't know, and they didn't realize until a couple of generations in, is that doing these ceremonies, performing these sacrifices, was having a real toll on the sailors that did it. Uh, inch by inch, bit by bit, those sailors started losing themselves to the sea. And, they would come into port and they would act erratically, violently. And at first, it was a thing that the nation powers that were still holding on to their identities tolerated, because it was something that would happen around the docks in the working class districts. It wasn't something that impacted the wealthy and the powerful. So they tolerated the sailors and their revels because it was leading to a lot of power and wealth for the capital. Eventually, that situation became untenable. The violence began to spread. People couldn't live peaceful lives as long as these sailors were around. And shortly after that started to reach a fever pitch, the mariner appeared. The mariner led armies of folks who had gone out to sea, performed these ceremonies, made these sacrifices, and lost a piece of themselves. They started to hear the mariner's call and grow the mariner's mark. They became lost to the mariner's influence, and slowly but surely they started their war on land and the societies of land. And that is when the nations really had their final collapse. They couldn't maintain sea powers anymore because they were constantly being raided by these awful creatures from the sea. Um, and nations dissolved and city states became the thing that was again, and people lost contact with each other until someone figured out featherweave. And then suddenly, it wasn't necessary to sacrifice people to the sea anymore for trade and whatnot, uh, because you could sail through the skies and there were no consequences for that. So, the mariner is still out there, and there are still people that sail ships and whatnot and take risks with the sea. But it's pretty common knowledge that that's not a good idea. And now that sky ships are fairly common, it's something they do less and less. Um, let's see. Sorry if you saw this one already, but would it be possible to do business with like sea sailors in the long term, or are they too far gone to keep as employees? Would you have to hire fresh batches of not yet cursed crew every time you wanted a ship to ship something at sea? It eventually reached that point for sure. Like the timeline for when the stars fell to now is about 200 years. And, at the 150-year mark, like it was basically not possible to do anything with the sea. Um, like there are some people that they're rigorously trained and like they know how to do it. They've figured out a way to sail, but they're still taking on a risk because even if you can protect yourself and your mind from the corruption of the sea, you still have to protect your ship and your body from other people that might be out there, from the drowned sailors from before. There are rumors that they don't die, that their armies just grow ever stronger. Uh, so yeah, it's a huge risk, but there's obviously some bastard out there that's making people do it, or some poor community out there that's forced to take on this very dangerous work. Uh, was the island intended to be a bit parallel to Riley from Lovecraft stuff, or was that more of a subconsciously done thing? Both yes and no. Obviously, there is some sort of cosmic horror element to this, but the island actually, like the root inspiration for it comes from the very dreadful December song, not dreadful as in bad, but dreadful as in just dealing with some pretty rough stuff song, The Island from the Crane Wife album. Like they sing about this like terrible, woeful place. And the setting called for it to be like even more extra than the island from that song. So I made it. It is literally a bit of land that is made out of shipwrecks and bones of drowned sailors. It's a rough place, and there is kind of a cursed Lovecrafty element to it that is more inspired by sailing superstition than it is by Lovecraft specifically. But the rumor is if you see the island off of your ship, you're in trouble. Essentially, like it's not going to leave you, and unless you have an incredibly miraculously gifted Star Watcher, you're not going to be able to escape it. It will keep you in its pull until you're forced to land there. And once you do, you're destined to join the mariners' ranks. Um, so the island has some spooky Lovecrafty stuff with it, and there is some inspiration there because, like, I have read a lot of Cthulhu-based stuff, not just Lovecraft stuff, but like mythos stuff generally, and so big inspiration came from there. But mostly it came from the island song and the fact that I like the Mariner is something that is an NPC that the cast created together. They wanted there to be this dread pirate lord who is super dangerous. And I kind of wanted pirates to be good guys in the setting generally if I could make them that way. There's only so much good guy, like it's all complicated and shades of gray and whatnot. But I was like, okay, if the sea is dangerous, we'll just make this dread pirate uh, a pirate who still sails on the sea. And that then I started looking around and I listened to the song The Island a bunch of times and I was like, okay, this place is where the mariner lives, and that makes it dangerous and terrible. Um, let's see. So, are there effectively D&D style clerics of certain luminaries, or are most cults and religions of the world disconnected from luminaries? There are some that are deeply connected to luminaries, and some that are not connected to luminaries at all. Uh, I kind of wanted to let that be free and open, but like the luminaries who have a heavy personality definitely would have like D&D style clerics. They're like, I will grant power to you, my scion, to go out and do what needs be done. So yeah, like, yeah, yes and no. All of that's fine. How abrupt was the starfall? Was an event of days or months or years? Were people able to prepare for it at all? People were not able to prepare for it. But the original starfall itself, like that was this, wild night where things fell from the heavens to the earth and did a lot of damage, and a lot of people died in that. Things like the maelstrom started up after a period of time. So like and the sea started to get worse after a period of time. So, it probably took a couple years for the sea to turn foul. And maybe even a decade or so for the maelstrom to start up. But like things since the starfall have been much worse. Is this going to be a VOD? Yes, I will keep this as a VOD. Does anybody fish from Featherweed Power Skyships? That sounds like a hilarious solution someone might come up with. Tail fishing. Yes, absolutely. There are definitely fishing vessels that are in skyships, though those are mostly privateer ships. The Red Feather Syndicate has found that trade is far more profitable than fishing. But if you were lucky enough to be a privateer ship or have access to privateer materials, like there are definitely people that will go net fishing from skyships, pulling up large amounts of fish and selling them to different places. Let's see. Okay, sorry I'm asking these because Bastard OCs, blah, 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 blah. Bone Island, yes, Bone Island. Taking a class on weird fiction like Lovecraft next semester. Hey, prepare for that to be super racist. If you deal with any of his work, Lovecraft was the worst. He was like racist for his time, which was pretty racist. Let's see here. Okay. So we have done a ton of discussion about Skyjacks stuff. Let me see. Yeah, there are still a bunch of you in the stream, and I have episode 2 all queued up. So I think I'm going to give my voice a rest for a second while we listen to episode 2. So I'm going to pull that up now. Oh, wait. I got to turn the volume on this up. This episode, I'll start off
Seeing the captain emerge, there's like a bit of a sigh of relief, and a few more members of the crew decide to move off to drink. However, I don't think your group feels any of this relief as the captain starts walking down the plank to the port itself. We see a small collection of rough-looking individuals, folks with bulging arms, covered in tattoos. A few of them have crude depictions of the mariner's mark, thankfully not inscribed upon their palms, but on shoulders and forearms, letting you know that they are definitely on the rougher side of transport. And in between all of them is Sonia. Sonia is a heavy woman. I think she is about 260 pounds, and most of that is muscle. Very broad shoulders, very wide hips, and strong thighs. She looks like a rugby player and a football player sort of got smashed together. Just a dense tower of strong flesh.
So 4 arms, 4 legs, 2 heads.
Yeah. So many limbs.
There's things like kill me.
And that's what she's wailing.
I'm a freak of science. I'm 2 people smashed together. Stop calling me Sonia. I'm 2 people. I'm 2 people smashed together.
We couldn't call it a voice. But it harmonizes with itself in a really eerie way. She stands there, arms folded, looking up at Oromar, who reflexively gives one of those winks once more, and she spits. You probably have a precious few minutes before you decide how you're going to confront this person who looks indeed quite angry.
I don't know if she's happy to see him.
She's not. It didn't end well. Someone needs to intercede.
When we go out, Gable acts like the muscle. So like tall, but wearing like a big cloak with most of their face covered. And so at this moment, they step up front and holds out a hand to Sonia.
How long has Gable been aboard the ship?
Who knows?
Have you been on the ship longer than I have?
Probably like yes, but not by much.
Okay.
Yeah.
But nobody really knows. I don't know like how much longer. 'Cause
Yeah.
by the time I got on the ship, it felt like you had like the
been here.
confidence of a person that had been on the ship for a long time.
So
longer
we
than 2
knew
years, at
we knew
least.
Oromar for longer than either of the other two did, and know a lot more about him.
Yeah, one of the interesting things, though, is that Gable was never part of Oromar's inner circle. There were other people that filled that role. You still cut an intimidating figure, but this is the first time that someone like Sonia, who knows Oromar well, has seen Oromar without his inner circle around him. And she now sees this person, this towering figure who was on the ship before, coming down. So she squints and slaps her hand onto your wrist, and you, in kind, grab her wrist and do the Eriner's shake, which is just making sure that nobody has any weapons, a bit of formality in a very informal place. Once you pull back from that, I've never seen you before.
Oh, but you have.
Not in this context.
Sonia, I agree that it's, we've not spoken before, but I'm looking forward to having a further discussion with you today.
Ain't got nothing to say with anyone in his company, she says, directing ire up to Oromar.
Yes. Well, without going into much detail, we would like you to consider this party a peace offering. We have some items that the captain would like to discuss with you, and also perhaps give you some well-earned apologies.
She steps back. I want you to make a roll for me, actually, to determine. I think this is going to be a hard roll, but I believe it would be charm. Yeah.
All right. So I got 3 of these.
So yeah, 3 green. It's going to be 3 purples. And I want you to take a blue die because you offered something that Sonia has been looking for, which is an apology.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
It's going to be the little like starburst.
The starbursts are successes.
Starbursts are successes. X's are failures.
What are the arrows?
Arrows are advantages. They'll cancel out the little target reticles, crosshairs.
I think it's a wash.
It's a failure because your successes and failures are even.
Yeah.
But you do have 2 advantages.
Failure with 2 advantages.
Failure with 2 advantages. In this circumstance, you can tell, like, she steps back and crosses her arms and looks you up and down and then looks over at Oromar. She's not happy, and it looks like it's going to take a lot to placate her. But she's also looking you up and down and seeing the sword on your hip. And do you also have your great sword on your back? Or
yes.
Okay. So seeing just your physical presence, the weapons that you carry, and that the captain's inner circle is not there, you think for a second there's a flicker of fear. She's worried that you might have killed them. And they are no small potatoes. She does not want an open conflict here. And she did bring this party out here to at least have some sort of conversation. So she steps back and nods. All right, then. Bring your men to the tavern and we'll talk about this. You can port here.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
With that, she snaps her fingers and her crew of thugs follows her into the tavern as Oromar continues to strut down the plank, winking at people as he goes.
As he's going down, like he passes in front of Jonnet and is like, okay, he grabs like his long coat, like, no, we don't need you anymore. We're good. But he's still like walking in place.
I turn to Dref and say, what did he do?
Sexual, abandonment. There is bad blood, between the 2 of them for.
Yes, but she's so mad. She's so mad.
The captain had a way of stirring up passion in people, and then rapidly abandoning that passion, and and emotionally there are. He was not a perfect man.
Good Lord. It's like this is a bigger hole to dig ourselves out of than I thought.
Should Oromar even come with us to the bar? I don't
think we can afford to not have him there.
You are using this as a trial run. Things don't have to go perfect. They just have to go.
So we cut to the tavern. I think it's the Wolfsbane Tavern in Wolf's Tooth.
Nice.
I would like one detail from each of you about this place as you enter.
Well, this might be obvious, but ain't nobody checking IDs.
Oh, yeah.
Jonet he's drank before and he will drink again, but sometimes they do not allow like minors in. But Jonet was like very cautious about it. But then as like he was trying to hide like behind Gable and between like Travis. But then as he got closer and closer to the door, he's kind of like realizing that nobody's going to say anything. So that by the time he walks in, he's just like, yeah.
Very confident.
I love it.
We'll get you a fake. There's definitely in the corner, in sort of a shadowy corner, there's an area that's kind of a gaming parlor.
Yeah. This place has stood for probably about 80 years, I'm going to say. What's something that was carved into one of the poles of the gaming parlor by a younger Travis?
Oh, man. It says William was here.
Yeah. I think you, like, as you're passing the gaming parlor room, you run your fingers across that carving very briefly before moving forward with the rest of your group. JPC, what about you?
So outside of this tavern, it's interesting to know that they have a large flagpole with a flag flying on it. And it's the wolf's tooth flag, which is a white wolf's tooth centered on a background of like green and gray stripes. The reason that this is mostly significant is that the world has changed a lot over the course of the last 50 years. And even in, Dref's short lifetime, nation states have begun to dissolve and smaller like localities have taken control. So there are flags like this all across the world of places that used to have allegiance to a certain nation or faction that have gone independent. And the fact that they're proudly flying the wolf's tooth flag around this part of the country means that we are very much in no man's land.
The tavern has ample exits.
Oh, great. Liz, thinking with that strategy brain.
Ample. They're only exits. You can't go in them. Only one entrance.
There's everybody. There are a bunch of like people with strong arms
exits.
crossed. If you try to enter that way, they go no.
There's one. If there's a fire, there's going to be it's going to be really safe, but you can't come in.
It's like those doors in movie theaters that like, you can't go into them. They're only for leaving the theater.
Yeah, but there is the smell of warm food in the air. There's stale drink wafting through this room as well.
And stale food and warm drink. There's the opposite
There's
as
the
well.
opposite. And there's also music. Someone's playing. There are people gathered around clapping, singing along.
Tidings, my comrades, we've done it again. The dawn she is breaking, our pints at their end. By morning's cruel light must our sails ascend to fly far from our families, lovers and friends.
You are led to a sort of back room that's close to the gaming parlor. And really, I say back room that's very generous. It's almost like a tent has been built up in the middle of this ramshackle building that you can tell has been repaired and fortified and modified over the years to be larger using parts from ships. So you're led into this like tented area that you can see is a little bit more secluded. And as you pass through the barrier to it, you can hear the din of the noise outside like audibly silence itself a little bit. At one side of the table is Sonia. She's sort of surrounded by her thugs. There are steins on the table that appear to be full, and there's places for you and your group to sit, and a fairly nice looking chair on the other side of the table as well.
Does it make sense for the actual negotiation for Travis and Dref to kind of head it up?
I do think so.
I think so.
I think Travis should be speaking during this negotiation.
Jonet does not take a seat at the table. Like he recognizes that this is kind of above like his position right now, but he does go to that seat and he takes the stein that is in front of that chair and he takes that for himself and he's like, all right, let's talk shop. He starts sipping on it.
I think Gable wants to stand, but seeing how uncomfortable it makes everyone who's seated to have me tower over them, I take a seat at the far end.
The captain, Oromar, goes right for like the most prominent chair. As he does so, he kind of like disconnects his weapon belt and, his gun and his sword, and holds it up, and like Dref runs over to grab it. The captain roughly like picks up the chair, smacks it onto the ground, sits down, takes the stein in front of him and downs the entire thing in one gulp, and then like presses the stein down and then puts his arms like heavily on the table.
We all kind of look at each other like, oh.
You can see a smile, a very begrudging smile, play across Sonia's face.
The captain kind of like snaps over his shoulder, pointing at Travis, and like kind of gives his hand a little like flick for Travis to begin. Dref catches Gable's eye as the captain does this, and then gives like Gable an excited smile.
And I give him the thumbs up like,
I really want the captain to get into a drinking contest.
Oh my God.
no!
That's fine.
That rule.
Oh, drunk song. Oh no.
Never thought I'd see you brave enough to go anywhere without Calavar by your side. And you know that Sonia, she's speaking to the captain right now. Sonia is referencing the captain's former right-hand man, who you all know quite intimate.
The captain has taken kindly to independence. He's branching out. It's something we all do from time to time. The captain and Calavar parted ways. A disagreement over money or goods or services. Who's to say, really? All that matters now is that the captain's here, I'm here, and you're here.
She squints. Look, I can't say that Oromar left me with any sort of feelings of trust, but I don't know you.
Well, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Travis Marigot, and I'm an associate of the captain's.
In what capacity?
Any capacity he needs. I pride myself on my ability to wear many hats. So
Thought you told me you didn't take male lovers, she says, looking to the captain.
Okay.
Is that something that's changed too?
So I want the captain to react in a certain way, but obviously non-vocally. And I'm going to use divine to try to like cast a way to like control my my zombie's actions.
Our zombie.
Our zombie. Is this what kind of action is this? Hard?
I think this is hard because it's a high pressure situation.
Is that 3?
That is 3. Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
there's a triumph there.
So I don't know. It's a triumph, but I think it's a failure because it's a triumph and a success in 2 of the non-ones and a threat. So there's 1 threat and a triumph in there.
What were you planning on communicating? Because that message does not get across, but I think it is overshadowed by a larger point.
So basically, I mean, what I wanted to do is a relatively simple thing, which is just let when he says that, like, kind of, the captain's kind of leaning forward right now. I just basically wanted the captain to kind of like lean back, when you're being verbally assaulted, to kind of be like, come on, bring it on.
I think in leaning back, he places a hand on Travis's leg, confirming something that was subtextual before, but not exactly what you planned to communicate.
Okay, cool.
All right. I see that some things have changed.
And also, I got a threat on doing this. Normally speaking, this magic is like, it's easier for me to channel, but sometimes it becomes more and more taxing.
That's right. 2 strain for this?
Jonnet noticed that I had been sweating a lot as of recently. I've been getting better with it because I've been working more and more with the captain. But it is like this connection between the 2 of us has to be constantly maintained. You may start to notice that I am sweating even more profusely now as I try to like keep this connection maintained.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Dref? Are you seated at the table?
No, Dref is as far, he's kind of like seen and not heard. Like he's like as far back as possible, not seated at the table, like in a corner of the room, trying to intently like keep this connection going. But he's the ship's doctor. Like he's not needed in this at all.
Yeah. There's like a moment where Jonnet is kind of resting on like a nearby table that's normal size, but it's like high on him. So it's like supporting his weight, and he's just kind of sipping from his stein. But then he like looks over and sees like a more like strained Dref, just kind of double takes that.
I think at this action, like seeing that happen, an expression changes on Sonia's face again. She looks to Travis with something closer to pity. Because she was done pretty dirty by Oromar, and she doesn't want to see another person go through that. Well, I imagine you could be a different man, not having Calavar at your side, being more open with yourself.
Keep in mind, Sonia, I understand there's a history, but we're not here to dig up the past. We're here to set course for a new, bright future.
Well, that's funny because I was promised to talk about the past. I'm owed an apology. And with that, you can see the large, thuggish men at her side, like, lay a comforting hand on her shoulder. And, like,
Sonia.
They have only murder in their eyes when they look towards you. But you can see in that gesture there is some compassion.
Well, I think there's certainly a difference between burying the hatchet and dredging up the past. And I am sure the captain would be more than willing to make amends.
James, what are these?
So these are story points. They work like the light side, dark side points in Edge of the Empire. So you would be able to take one of these and move it over into a column I control in order to upgrade your dice, just like you could in the Star Wars system.
Gotcha.
Do we think that the thing here, the danger here is that she wants a verbal apology and
Yes.
we know that he can't do it?
So I think I want to move one of those over. I think Dref was at some point counting on this being the case. So what he did through controlling the captain, and so this is kind of like a retroactive die that I'll roll.
Yeah.
Had the captain Quill in his own like handwriting write out an apology that he now has in like letter form that he is going to give to her.
I think that you sort of prepared for a few different scenarios. So different pockets have different letters.
Oh, that's so good.
So you have to roll to make him grab the right letter.
So yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think this check is hard.
Okay, but I did upgrade.
This is
Oh boy, this is great. No, it's just another freaking failure.
Wait, can we help?
I think I will allow some help in this. I think one of you assisted Dref in this task. If you tell me how you did it, I'll allow you to roll a blue die and add that to the check.
Since we knew that I would be negotiating, would be close to the captain, Dref sort of briefed me on the pockets. So as I say, like, I'm sure the captain would be willing to make amends. I kind of lean over, put my arm around him, and like tap him on the chest, like on the pocket where the right letter is.
There's not a great chance of this succeeding, but we'll try it.
So it just looks like you're tapping him.
The captain, what is the actual roll? Is it a failure or a wash?
It is a wash with a threat.
A wash with a threat. So it grabs the wrong message from the wrong pocket. How is this message off?
The one that he wanted was like a straight up apology for his behavior. Like it explains why he ran off.
Why did we make more than one?
Because we didn't know how angry she would be. So there was another scenario where she was happy to see him.
Oh no!
And she wanted to like rekindle something with him. So he prepared another statement about how he is like since their last meeting has become engaged and he is very happy. He declines like her offer to, rekindle because he is like, he has a wife who is waiting for him, which is like not the message that she wants to hear.
I think also to this, instead of saying something like, my heart belongs to another, but my service belongs to you, I will do you a great favor to make amends for how we left things.
But I also don't think that there's an apology in here.
No.
Because there's like the apology scenario and and the I'm happy to see you, there's no need for an apology scenario. So I think this is the one that's just like, thank you, and like, I'm happy to see you too. Like, it's not, it just doesn't contain the apology part
I
that
think
she
you
wants.
do still offer your service.
Yes, yes.
So that letter gets passed over, and you can see that it has the wrong seal on it.
But he also does it with the same confident smirk that he was going to use regardless of what letter
Yeah.
got passed over.
No.
And I'm going to suffer another strain.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like situationally it's appropriate that this is going very poorly.
Yeah, like you see that the wrong seal is on that letter. Travis, I don't think paid enough attention to know which one had the right seal, which one had the wrong seal.
This note will explain everything.
Also, no one knows except Dref, because Dref was the one that wrote these. So everyone else still feels very confident in what's going on here.
So Sonia reads it, and her eyes grow wide, her brow furrows, and also it looks like there's a wave of sadness that kind of washes over her. And once again, she looks over to Travis. She sighs. So this really is the one then.
Dref's eyes get a little wide and knows that he can't communicate this to Travis, so he just sees how this plays out.
Yes, the one. That's the one thing that he wanted to tell you in this circumstance, and then hoping we could move forward.
Well, I certainly hope that you've really grown as much as you say you have, but since you offered service, I will take it. To be honest with you, Wolf's Tooth hasn't been doing very well over the past few months. The Red Feather Syndicate has been strengthening their hold on the region. Fewer and fewer ships like yours are able to cross any borders at all. Many people in this small settlement need things that haven't been able to come to port. They haven't seen a ship the size of yours in a good few months. And there have been Red Feather ships flying past full to the brim of cargo. And I've caught wind of one. If you're looking to do a favor, if you're looking for a friendly port, and perhaps if you're looking for a bit of cargo of your own, I've got a business proposition for you.
Well, Sonia, I just checked my list, and it looks like we're looking for those 3 exact things.
Well, I don't know what kind of cargo you have.
No, should I brought the list?
Gabriel, please.
What? No, absolutely.
I don't know what kind of cargo you have aboard, but Uhuru's going to need to be pretty light for this. You're going to rob a ship.
Jonnet puts down his stein and just like
How full is it still?
Very full. It's so full. He's been mostly working through froth at the top.
It doesn't taste good. It's very bitter.
But he just knows that this is what the grown-up pirates are drinking. He just like comes over and like he's just like hanging on like the back of Travis's chair because he's just like kind of getting into it.
Certainly we could rob a ship. We could rob a dozen ships if we needed to, but thankfully it is just the one, and we'll be happy to do it.
It's the Civility. That name rings pretty clear in all of your heads. I want to know one rumor that you've heard about the large Red Feather Syndicate cargo ship, the Civility.
I think that the name of the Civility is this like widely accepted joke. Mm-hmm. The manner of the crew is anything but. Red Feather Syndicate has their own rules for how people like engage in, you know, what they do, but it's widely known that the captain of the Civility has no such rules. Murder, plunder, pillage, like all of the terrible things that pirates are like stigmatized for are alive and well in terms of the Civility. These are bad people.
Yeah, I think the rumor has it that while most Araners don't partake in that sort of thing, it's because they don't bear the mariner's mark. Mariners, folks who travel across the sea, have a well-earned reputation for doing that sort of thing. It played heavily into the fall of civilization before. There are very few mariners that have sort of crossed into the sky. The captain of the Civility is rumored to be one of them.
I think they also have ties to the church.
Oh, yes.
Oh, they have like a priest on the
Yeah,
ship.
they have a big bad priest.
There are rumors that they never have to land.
Yeah.
They've just been in the air for years and have never touched down.
never had to make repairs, never had to like restock coal or anything on the ground. They've somehow found a way to stay airborne.
Kind of like jumping off of that, where it's like because they've been in the air for so long, it's rumored that like the maneuvering of that particular ship is just bonkers. They do things where like the crew like tie themselves to solid parts of the ship so that they can just like bank it almost at like a 90-degree angle and get crazy angles while they're attacking because they've just been in the air for so long. They just know it.
I think one of the ways that you steer in the air is related to the red stripes that move through your feather weave. It's a way that you manipulate it, and one of the things that you've heard that you're not even sure you believe is that the Civility has only red sails.
Do we know the name of the captain of the Civility?
Of course you do, and that would be
Franz Ferdinand.
I do like Franz.
Okay, so its name is Franz. Ooh, can you have a nickname?
Franz Fishhook.
Yeah, Fishhook. Ooh. The Red Feather Syndicate.
Yes.
They are a trading company?
They are a trading company. They would be the equivalent of the East India Company for this setting. They're sort of like the East India Company mixed with the Freemasons. They control the production of featherweave. They are the only major producer. Everyone who produced featherweave slowly got taken over until they monopolized the industry, which means they control how ships work. Before the Uhuru became a privateer ship, before you sort of left the good graces, you were registered with the Red Feather Syndicate. All shipping that takes place between nations, or at this point, between settlements, happens through the Red Feather Syndicate. If there is any sort of centralized entity anywhere on this planet, it is probably the Red Feather Syndicate itself. They are the most important trade partner for pretty much everyone, except for smaller settlements like Wolf's Tooth, which sort of thrive on smaller ships or ships that are syndicate ships that are willing to be lax with the rules to make a little bit of extra money, that sort of thing.
So it's widely known that the Red Feather Syndicate like controls the skies, but they have a certain policy when it comes to pirates. Their primary purpose is not to hunt pirates. They have like privateers that do that for them. There's mainly security on their ship. Franz Fishhook, who is the captain of the Civility, used to be, before he was the captain of a trade ship, a privateer whose job it was to like hunt pirates. One of the policies that he is still widely known for, if he encounters pirates, he never kills the captain, he kills the crew. It's kind of given him notoriety because most pirates have some sort of like democratic way that ships are run, and pirate crews are terrified of Franz Fishhook because he targets crews and not captains.
So most captains cannot keep control of their crew when he is in the picture because they will mutiny, and that mutiny, even though the Civility is quite formidable, might have lost a few engagements had it not been for a fearful, unstable crew overthrowing their captain at critical bad moments.
So we know that her request to go after the Civility is a request that like only the most desperate of people would even consider taking on.
You want us to go after the Civility?
I want your captain to go after the Civility.
Well, as everyone knows, when the captain goes after the Civility goes after the crew. So, in a sense, we'll all be going after the Civility.
That ship is too fast.
That ship is fast. That ship is aggressive. That ship is starving this region. And also, she leans in, and the people who she's with make doubly sure to check that these sound-dampening curtains are secure. I've got a line that ship is carrying some very precious cargo. Hey heroes, welcome to the mid-roll of episode 2 of campaign Skyjacks.
Oh, I thought I had cut the mid-roll out. Yeah, so that's part 1 of episode 2. Man, so much fun stuff there. I love all of the like collaborative world building stuff that we do. Um, if you haven't already, like make sure if you are a backer for the Secret Archive to listen to the world building stuff that we did for Bujanith, because it was so much fun, and like there are so many great in jokes that are from that world building session. And also, like all of the cool stuff that came out of Bujanith is related to that. So check that out. Yeah, you know what? I would wonder how different it would be if the civility was just carrying like Jordans or something. Really makes you think. Yeah, hey, yeah, hey, please give us a 5-star review. We could use some new 5-star reviews. They help us get discovered. Um, I really want this show to be a super big success, and the only way it can do that is if we get more people listening to it. And I can assure you, over here at the One Shot Network, we're doing everything within our power to help grow our audience and make sure that we got more people listening. But I want to do more cool stuff, like hang out with listeners like y'all, and put together these zines and maybe make more soundtrack albums and music and stuff like that. And all that starts with us having more people listening to the show. Um, so if anybody wants to ask any questions, I'll open the floor for questions again. There's one that I saw earlier that I didn't get a chance to answer, and I hope that person is still around. But they asked how I imagined the young bloods dressing. I think the young bloods, of the clothing availabilities in the setting, I think the young bloods are closest to like kind of aristocratic Victorian era British clothing, like the kind of clothing that you would expect from a piratical setting. And that's just because they represent that sort of old money, like British aristocracy colonial like stuff. So that's what those are going to be. They're going to be posh as fuck. It's going to be elaborate as fuck. I don't think it's quite painted faces and wigs elaborate. That might even be a little bit later than Victorian era. Um, but it is like very, very fancy. I think, gosh, I can't even remember his name. Friggin', what's Youngblood's name again? Tiberius. Tiberius, yeah. I think Tiberius is a little bit more cavalier. He's a military man and pirate hunter. So he's wearing red feather reds, and captain's red feather reds. So they're a little bit elaborate. But he's dressed to fight. So, um, I don't think heels exactly. I mean, he might have a boot with like a little bit of a thicker sole, but not quite heels. There are people in the Youngblood family, like men in the Youngblood family, who would have some heeled boots. But probably nobody who is in the military for sure. Um, yeah, the Swans and Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, that is pretty close. Um, look at some of the court clothing from Elizabeth and the Golden Age. We live in a very weird sort of combination of time periods and whatnot in the Skyjacks universe. So there's, there's a lot of different influences that we're gonna get. He's a little bit less Francis Drake. I think Francis Drake. I feel like he's more Captain Morgan, like later era Captain Morgan, than he would be Francis Drake. Drake was a little bit of a more refined creature. Although, I don't know, I guess Drake did famously betray some people that were close to him in the past. Interesting. I don't know. Tiberius is his own kind of monster. Nathan Drake. Yeah, sure. He's killed so many people. Um, Yeah, denim is canon now. You gotta remember the denim is canon. James, when are we going to get an in-universe Captain Cook who gets murdered by native Hawaiians? Um, I mean, you're definitely going to see feather people get murdered by natives defending their homelands because that's what Skyjacks is about, baby. Um, I'm sure it will come up at some point. Are non-human people relatively common in the Skyjacks verse, or are the PCs an exception? Uh, Non-human people are very uncommon. Um, Very, very uncommon. And like, I wouldn't consider anybody on the Skyjacks crew as non-human. Like, they're all human enough, you know. They're humans that have powers that, you know, you could get powers from all sorts of different places. Um, so I like we haven't run into any of entities really that I consider super non-human. Yeah. But Gable is an angel, but angels can transubstantiate. The only difference between Gable and other humans is Gable has a better understanding of divine magic, and Gable does not age. And as we've seen, like that's a power that Travis was able to get. So Gable is not non-human by any stretch of the imagination, I would say. Yeah, Gable's just bigger, better, and hotter, which that's something humans can be. Um, let's see, is there anything else? I mean, Gable doesn't really have wings right now. They have a feather. I suppose they will be somewhat less human. Like, I have no idea what happens as Gable's going to rebuild wings if they decide to do that. Um, so in my opinion, Gable is basically human. Um, that's just how I feel about it. Um, let's see here. I mean, like we know that Hildred, despite being shorter, is also bigger, better, and hotter. Hildred is just more swole than your average human. Um, I mean, Liz might fight me on that, but you know, are we going to learn why Gable fell? Absolutely, you are. Liz and I both know why Gable fell. We know the story behind it. I can't wait for us to get there. I have no idea when that's going to happen, though. Um, Sorry, I think I asked this before too, but does the church have a kind of saint equivalent? Yeah, I'm going to say yes. Anything cool from Catholicism is something I like to keep. Something that we will bring into the setting relatively soon is the idea of reliquy, taking the parts of a dead person and using them in magic spells or to ward off evil creatures or whatnot. Uh, when Mel and I visited Italy on our honeymoon, like there were relics of saints that were just displayed in churches, and I think it's the most metal shit in the world. So it's definitely something that I want to bring into the Skyjack setting. It's also like reliquy is something that is really not a thing in the Bible. It is a folk tradition that evolved out of Christian beliefs. So I want to keep everything that sort of resembles folk traditions. I want to keep that in the setting as much as possible. Um, Anything that does not feel like it is part of a decision of organized religion, but a decision made by a group of people who happen to believe in a religion that they have sort of contorted and justified to match up with their religious beliefs, that is my shit. And I want that to be the bedrock of how magic works in the setting. Um, Santa Claus confirmed in universe. Jesus Christ. um, I mean, that's basically the tagline for Skyjacks: bigger, better, hotter. Abso-fucking-lutely it is. Uh, One shot. Are there more types of magic than divine and necromancy? Are their types actually inherently different, or are they simply regarded as different by people? I believe that necromancy and divine magic are the same thing. I also believe that arcane magic and divine magic are kind of the same thing. Those delineations are originally made because that's how Genesis operates as a system. Um, as I sort of evolve Skyjacks more and more into its own thing, those delineations are less necessary. I think all of it has to do with having some sort of understanding of the divine workings of the universe and how you dial into that understanding. Um, Liz may disagree with me on this, and we'll probably find out through the story. But Liz mentioned in the most recent episode not feeling good about controlling the captain. I believe that might be all psychological. I firmly believe that there is nothing morally wrong with necromancy in the Skyjacks universe. I think it is just another way to use magic the way all people use magic. And there are taboos that are associated with it, but they're essentially artificial. Um, I'm so excited about Hildred slash Gable, small and tall, but also dreading trying to draw it because I already struggle every time I try to draw Dref and Gable in the same picture. Hey, Coast, I am deeply, deeply looking forward to your Gable slash Hildred drawings. I am into that pairing. As I am into all pairings, I've liked all the drawings that you've done so far. One time in Italy, we were singing in a church and we were walking out of it. Someone in the group said, "There's a dead body in here." And I thought we were an unknown witness to a murder, but it was a Saints Preserved body. Yeah, they're just dead bodies in churches that are hundreds of years old. It fucking rules, which is why I want that shit in Skyjacks. Sort of goes back to how the Greeks didn't have a formal united religion and they were more of a collection of multiple cults that eventually formed a semi-cohesive mythos. Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of how luminaries work. Let's see. Are you going to introduce any of the cool stuff, Russian Orthodox in origins, Byzantine church stuff? Because there's so much neat everything there. I actually don't know much about that. That might be something that one of the writers that I hire will introduce. I'm trying to stick to my areas of knowledge and my experience if I can, because I don't want to overstep cultural bounds and appropriate things. I kind of want people from a certain cultural perspective creating stuff if I can manage it. Let's see here. Saint Rita in Chicago has a relic that contains a bone from Saint Rita of Cassia. Yeah. Uh, I fucking love Reliquary. It's so dope, and I'm very excited about it being a big thing in this setting. Taboos against zombie busing. I don't know. I don't know. Some taboos might be there for a reason. I don't know that it's all artificial. There's one spot in Prague where supposedly some guy tried to steal jewels from a church and a statue of Mary grabbed his arm and wouldn't let go, so they had to cut it off. Dope. Dope ghost stories. Hell yeah. Are there any other religions than the church and luminary worship? Yes. The small answer is yes. The thing is, it's really hard to separate luminary worship from like other bits of folk belief. I think there are plenty of people who might see like small religions in sphere and their understanding would be, oh, they're just worshiping a luminary. So that's hard to say. Like, I think if a religious group identifies that the god that they're worshiping is not a luminary, uh, I don't know. I don't know what the real answer is because it's really hard to state the nature of luminaries. It's like very similar to the Holy Trinity in that they are all related and not related. Let's see. Hildred rides around on Gable's shoulders. Hell yeah. Um, are you having fun right now? I'm having a blast. I love talking about world building stuff. Uh, hey, I live to murder. That is the thing that I love to do. Well, I think one of my favorite moments so far, like in Skyjacks, has been recording Hildred's date with Gable with Liz, and popping the "Can I kiss you?" question because Liz was not expecting it, and like it even shows up on the audio. Liz gasps. Uh, it is one of the most satisfying role-playing moments that I have had this year. I will say, it was so much fun to murder people in very gentle and soft ways. Um, I've taken to outsourcing some of the world building in my Pokemon setting to my friends. Yeah, collaboration rules. It's the best. Um, have y'all ever considered putting together a world map for release, or are you keeping it very theater of the mind on purpose to keep the mysterious atmosphere of Sphere? So kind of option B. I would love to release a map. The thing about maps is it pins down kind of what land exists, which means if I want to add something later, I can't do it. So what I might do is very individualized maps, like map the coastline that makes up Bujanith, map the area that is between Shank Hill and Wolf's Tooth, have very focused world maps and not one that fill in too many blanks, because I want my players to have the ability to make up whatever they want for this setting, whatever we need for it. There are definitely places that exist, but right now it is not useful to me to define exactly how far apart they are and like what the boundaries are, because that limits our creativity. And I kind of, in a world book and potential role playing game based on Skyjacks, I kind of want players and GMs to have that same power. Like, we got so much good stuff out of making Bujanith and Iropiora and all that. I think playing a Skyjacks role playing game, like having a Skyjacks role playing experience, should be a thing that allows you to make up stuff that feels tailor made to the story that you're telling. So there might even just be a guide on how you can fill in your own world map. Um, so, you know, potential ideas. But I would like to do some map stuff. Let's see. Please don't make me ship the captain and Dref. I don't need more Dref ships. Everybody needs more Dref ships. Come on. Why are you afraid to live deliciously? Exactly. Interesting. I keep thinking of those old world maps where giant sections are just blank. Yeah, that might be eventually how I do something like that. You know, I think really doing an earnest start on world book stuff is a 2020 project. And we'll just have to see how that has to get filled in. I might release an Atlas zine that just has like different areas that we have seen and created mapped out, but not where they are in relation to each other. I always get nervous when DMing about romantic stuff between PCs and NPCs, especially when it's the NPC initiating. How do you work around stuff like that with Gable and Hildred? That is talking to the player and checking in and making sure they are comfortable with stuff. Um, Also, like I wasn't going to do any romance stuff unless the character that I was playing was completely willing to respect the boundaries of my player's character. Like, I initially wanted to have people like find Gable physically appealing in that bar scene, because I like the idea of having a world that, or implying, like showing off that the world of Sphere does not have hang-ups that we do in our world, and that sexual politics is approached very differently than our society, in that a person who is non-binary, and like appearing non-binary and presenting non-binary, like they are they find partners like any other person, and like they are part of that world, and it's just not a thing the people of Sphere really care about. So I just kind of wanted to establish that. Uh, with Hildred, I had Hildred come on pretty strong because I wanted to see how Gable would react to somebody essentially propositioning them. And also, I kind of think of Ire Piora as having like kind of an Olympic Village syndrome, in that a lot of these top level athletes who come out for Ire Piora are there to hook up. Like, they're around other people who have dedicated their lives to the passion that they pursue, and they're all in great physical shape, and they're also minor celebrities, so they're just kind of enjoying themselves and having fun. And initially, when Hildred approached Gable, that's what it was. It was, hey, we're in an atmosphere where we're in kind of an Olympic Village situation, and I'm pretty much, propositioning you for a very casual encounter. And Gable was like made nervous by that. And so I had the character back off, and, I played out the scene of like Hildred walking back to her compatriots and going, it didn't work out, and them sort of like, cheering and saying better luck next time and whatnot. I did not expect Gable to ask for Hildred's hotel room number. So after the session, I talked to Liz about potentially there being more between these characters. And then some lucky rolls have made it more and more romantic. And now it's gotten to the point where I've done a lot of backstory work on Hildred. And I think Hildred is an interesting character. And I just want to see more from Hildred. And I think she's bringing a lot of interesting perspective to the setting now. Uh, James, I appreciate how friendly you are to shipping and shippers, both canon and fanon. A lot of creators avoid romance in general, and some get very negative about fanships. Yeah, so I come from a background of like loving shipping and reading a ton of fan fiction. When I was very young, I read a ton of Harry Potter fan fiction, Digimon fan fiction. That was like when I was very young. Dragon Ball Z fan fiction. And a lot of that was ship fiction. And growing up as a queer youth, it was one of the only places that I was getting access to queer content, and queer content surrounding franchises that I really cared about. X-Men fan fiction. So I I like that in my stuff. And like that's something that Kat and I both, care about. Like we both grew up in cultures of fan fiction, and it being an important part of how we consume media. So I try to embrace all of that, and my perspective is any ship is possible and any ship is potentially interesting. There will be some ships in the show that will actually play out, and that'll just be how the story goes, but that doesn't make other ships less valid or less interesting. Those are just what me and my performers are interested in exploring for our story. But I love romance in general, and I love romance stories, and I don't think there's enough cool romance stories out there. One of the reasons I love Starcrossed so darn much. Um, so I fully encourage it, and like the world of Sphere and the world of Skyjacks is very set up to facilitate that. It's a very queer universe that is very open and accepting towards queer people, so you can easily see those stories in a setting uh, without having to worry about taboos or anything like that, because that's not the important part of this story. There's enough dangerous and terrible stuff in Sphere without, you know, folks getting oppressed in that way. So I just want to see more romance and more gay stuff. So there's going to be more romance and more gay stuff. Um, let's see. What would it be reasonable to release the map that people have so far as they know so soon? I don't know how reasonable that would be. Like I said, I think I could do like a city map of Bougeneath, or a small regional map of Wolf's Tooth and its relation to Shankhill and all that. Um, but again, there's just not enough places. I don't want to decide how far one place is from another place, just because I might want to add a bunch of different places later on. Um, Terry Pratchett, for a super long time, did not provide a map for Discworld. And he had a pithy line about how you can't map a sense of humor. But as we all know, because we're living in the future, Discworld did eventually get a map. And I think Discworld did not have maps initially because Terry wanted to keep options open for stuff that he could do. Dealing with a flat setting, he kind of ran the risk of like writing himself into a corner if he defined some boundaries and borders. Um, and the style of world building that I do is not complete world building. You know, there are writers like Pat Rothfuss who has this very concrete idea of what his setting is and have thought through all these different aspects of you know, the history of the world and the geography and the cultures there and all that. And I want to fill in as few blanks as possible because those blanks are useful real estate and they'll help me down the road. Um, that's the difference between improvisation and like fully realized written fiction. Let's see. Made a little nerd, then JPC, realized it was JPC. As a non-binary person, that means so much to me. Oh, I'm so glad. I mean, Gable is very important to me, and there we have already met our next non-binary character. It has not been made canon yet or made clear, but Leo Toa, who is the representative of the Tempest Armada, is a non-binary character. Who is not gender fluid, not non-binary like Gable. They are non-binary, using they them pronouns only. Uh, they are probably not going to show up in the story with a heavier role after this scene for like another 6 weeks after the negotiation is over, just based on the pace that the crew is going. But Leotoa is going to be very, very important to the story. So you will see more of them, and we will learn about Heartroot Tea, which is some like a thing in the universe of Sphere that people use to transition and maintain transitions. I will probably release a little Skyjacks zine thing about Heartroot Tea and its various uses and whatnot. It's something that I'm very excited to introduce through the setting, and will get introduced as soon as Leotoa is playing a larger role. Um, let's see here. Digimon airing some dirty laundry. Yeah, I was into Digimon when I was young. Um, let's see. I hope we get to see more from Hildred after this arc. I hope so too, but you know, that is up to Liz, I think, primarily. Liz is kind of controlling that character story, and it's what Liz is interested in exploring there. I played Starcross back when it was tension at Unplugged, and y'all, my buddy and I did it fairly recently as a demon and a math nerd. He possessed their child will destroy the world. That is adorable and so strange. I love it. Um, Hell yeah, you're speaking from my soul, re fan fiction, as the only queer representation. That's one of the reasons your games and your network mean so much to me. You make me feel represented and welcome. Well, I'm so glad to hear that. Like that is one of the things that I want to do with the network is like I didn't have space for these things, and like there's still a lot of places where I feel like I don't have space to see myself in the fiction that I enjoy. Like I think it was not I as an AI, the son of a hurricane, uh, who was talking about how important and like meaningful trans headcanons are to them and how they experience media, because it's a way to control that media and create space for themselves in that media that is not provided for them. And my theory with a lot of one shot stuff is like, well, as long as we have the reins, we'll just make the space. Like I want to see stories that are about romance, so I'm going to tell romance stories. And I want there to be queer romance stories, so those romance stories are going to be queer. So that's something that I'm into and I want to see in, you know, the settings that I create. And that's why Skyjacks is so focused on creating queer space and creating multicultural space as well. Like, I want to make it very clear that this setting is not just a bunch of white people, because it is supposed to be definitely not that. Um, let's see. As an ace person, I really appreciated Disaster Ace Lenik Gilo. Yeah, I love that about Lenik as well. And there will definitely be ace people that show up in Skyjacks. I am like hard romantic and sexual, so like there's part of me that is preoccupied by romantic stories and sexual romantic stories, but I will definitely be making space for Ace as well, and Arrow too. I don't know, the broker might be Ace. I don't see them having much of a sexuality. They're too busy being a bird nerd. um Oh, I figured they were NB based on pronouns. I was excited to see them. Yeah, I just wanted to make that explicit because one of the tricky things about they them pronouns is it some people only notice it when you point it out, because they're not looking for it. Um, let's see. I told my family there's a character named Leotoa, and their immediate reaction was to ask if y'all pronounced it right. Hey, did I pronounce it right or not? I pronounced so many things wrong. I will never forget the moment I was supposed to thank Keith Hawk, and I thanked Heath Cock instead. Um, so, do dogs exist? Dogs exist. Do you mean, do dogs exist in Skyjacks? Sure, I'll confirm dogs for Skyjacks. That seems fair. Oliver, you're in Skyjacks now. Um, they're all excited that there is a Samoan named character in it, though. Yeah, I am too. I didn't want to put too much Samoan cultural markers in it because I don't want to appropriate anything into the Skyjacks universe, but I am glad that there is a Samoan name in there. And I'm glad that it belongs to a character who will be very important. Let's see. Yeah, James, it is one of the only places I see queer people represented casually without it being weirdly, obviously, intentionally to make it be queer. It just feels so natural and wonderful. Again, I'm very very glad that that's what we're doing. I'm just making the world as queer as I always want it to be, and that's something that I think campaign has always done. Like Kat did that in our Star Wars universe as well. Um, that like there was so much casual queerness, and that was even easier because we were in space. And like I think by the time you get to be in space, the idea that heterosexuality is like the reigning sexual modality is kind of absurd. Nobody cares about that stuff in space. You're in space. Space is gay. uh Oh, terrible no-ass ace representation for the broker. Oh, I'm sorry that the broker doesn't have an ass. I mean, the broker has so much going on for them. We don't need to pity the broker. The broker's doing just fine. You pronounced it mostly right, which is way more than most people do. Well, I can always try harder though, especially because they're an important character. Um, Not to divert the conversation, but this whole thing is so fascinating and informative. As someone who has never had romance as part of their life, not ace, just severely sheltered. But that's why I love One Shot, because y'all are so good at showcasing these avenues that I just don't have experience in. So thanks, James, for many, many reasons. I will say that growing up, I did not have a lot of like romantic relationships with people either. I have been bisexual since I was like 10, is when I knew that I was attracted to both, or not even to both, to all genders, really. Well, I figured out I was attracted to all genders later on in life, but I knew that I was attracted to more than one gender when I was 10. But I didn't date anyone till I was 14. And I haven't had a lot of male relationships. And when I was a teenager, and especially a hormonally driven teenager who was craving kind of romantic attraction and affection, um, I mostly explored that stuff through fiction, and a lot of that fiction was fan fiction. So I definitely understand feeling the need to explore yourself through fictional spaces. And I'm glad that our shows can provide a little bit of that for you because I know that that was super helpful to me when I was growing up. Um, let's see. Are there animals that are considered good luck or bad luck to have on a skyship? I'm going to say yes, but I think that tradition will vary from ship to ship. I don't think I want to have that strictly defined. I think there are probably some common superstitions that Skyjacks have, but I don't think there are any universally acknowledged superstitions apart from the fact that water is bad. Um, I will probably learn new superstitions as they become relevant and unfold in the show. I try to keep things open and try to keep things fluid because the Red Feathers, for as terrible as they are, they're a pretty multicultural group because they're constantly recruiting people from different places. It's not like old colonialism where you would have just British sailors sailing British ships. Like people from all over are sailing on these sky ships. Um, yes, space is definitely gay. Um, Concave ass writes, "Oh no, it's getting worse for the broker." Hey, is there a link to the Skyjacks Discord somewhere? Yes. Let me pull up that link while I answer another question. Um, let's see. Do you think there's going to be art of NPCs like how the main cast has portraits? Yes. There is another portrait that is being made right now as we speak. I will probably be hiring other artists to do other portraits. Uh, but like it's expensive, and we just constantly need more money to produce more cool things. So we'll eventually get more portraits and stuff. How do I make an invite here? Invite people. Here we go. Nope, that's not it. No, that's user settings. That's not helpful. Wait, there's another way that I can do this. I'm such an old person. I only know how to use Discord from like certain providers. Like I know how to use it from my phone pretty good, but I don't know how to use it very well from my desktop. Okay, invite copied, and now to drop it into Twitch chat. And done. There's the Discord. Cool. The broker is so good at sneaking around because his ass doth not clap. Yeah, absolutely. It's a professional thing from his life as an assassin back when he lived in the world of Neoscum. Do the Red Feathers recruit by force? So as I have said in the market scene, I have not tackled slavery as a world building thing in the world of Skyjacks yet because I very strongly believe that I am not the person who should write about it. Um, it's Skyjacks is an anti-colonial narrative, and it is hard to deal with colonialism without confronting the specter of chattel slavery, because that is the worst thing that colonialism ever did. And maybe not ever did, because there are also plenty of genocides that hang on the hat of colonialism. Uh, it's it's a rough, bad thing, and I definitely don't feel like I am the person to write about it. So I'm probably going to be hiring people to flesh that out more for me. I will say something that we have confirmed in Skyjacks, even if it's only through veils and shades, is indentured servitude, which is how a lot of people in the real world, in the golden age of piracy, found themselves in a life of piracy, being sold to the new world, either from a debtor's prison or just from a prison generally. So like Hildred was a pirate who would raid on birds, and eventually they were captured, and somebody bought Hildred out of prison, and essentially Hildred was working off an indentured servitude and paying back her quote unquote debt to society with money. So I do know that it is possible to enter Red Feather or even privateer, like professional places through indentured servitude, which is close to slavery, if only not as bad. So eventually, that will get fleshed out because it kind of has to. But things like heavier topics like that are difficult to take on because it makes the world less light and fun. Um, and like it needs to be handled in a very sensitive way that, again, cannot stress this enough. I don't think I am the person to do that. I don't know enough about history. I am not from a background that was dramatically affected by that. So I don't want to be the one to speak to it, and I am sure there are plenty of talented and capable people that will be able to help the setting along in the ways that it needs to go to feel authentic and really be about the things that it's supposed to be about. Um, Sorry, I had to pop out for a sec. It's so strange, but yeah, I would have loved to have something like fanfic when I was growing up. It's I'm getting better about things, but being so emotionally, yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult, and the cool thing about fan fiction is it is like such an individually driven thing. It's actually one of the reasons that I love podcasting too, is there's no one to tell you no in fan fiction. Like you do the things that you want to see and that make you happy. Uh, and that's what's so magical about entertainment that people really have full control over without getting shut down by anyone else. So let's see here. Bunch of people heading out. Okay, since we got people heading out, I'm going to put on the last part of episode 2, and we'll finish out this stream after we finish that.
How precious.
What's on the boat?
What's on the list?
Couple days ago.
The captain twirls his mustache.
I love it. Couple days ago, someone passing through here said they had a private vessel. Never seen anything like it. Really small. Featherweeb didn't even have any red striping on it. Still sailed pretty. Said that they were just traveling around. They also said they traded in information. I'm generous. Gave him a room, asked him what he knew. He said he'd been darting through the clouds and caught sight of the civility. They were meeting with capital ships from the church, no less. I'm talking Ironside ships that only come out for parades and celebrations and the bloodiest conflicts.
Gable tightens their jaw and is visibly more tense.
They said they saw more than one, moving something into the hold of the civility. The civility's still just been patrolling the region, but you can tell the way they've been moving around, never making contact with any port, let alone a port like ours. They're getting antsy. They're holding on to something big, and I don't know how long it's going to be there. I ain't asking you to take down the civility. What I'm asking is that you board the civility, you get whatever's in that cargo hold, and you bring it back here. We'll see to it that your ship gets repaired after whatever conflict, and we'll split the rewards.
You expect us to board one of the most agile ships in the sky and make it out alive?
John it.
It's either that or we're going to float you. That also sends ice running down your veins. Floating is a pretty severe punishment that can happen to anyone. After the world fell, the seas rose. There are more rivers and lakes inland than there ever have been before. Normally, this wouldn't be a bad thing, but those rivers and lakes are tainted with brackish salt water. Any water these days is dangerous. It's a type of exiling where they take a crew of people, put them on a raft, and send them down a river, and after that, it's the mariner's territory.
So it's agreed. We'll steal the cargo, get off alive, get our ship repaired and repainted.
I'm sure we could do something like that for you.
Because,
though I will miss that new painting that you have on the side.
well,
Most of the people in the room kind of shake their heads, but there's one of those stronger guys that's like, what is it?
He's the 5%.
I don't get it. What is it?
Doug, it's a taint.
His eyes get wide.
And we'll split the reward.
Except I get to keep what's from the church.
You mean relics?
If it is pertinent to me, I will keep it. No questions asked.
Make a coercion. She's already afraid of you. I'm going to set this at average, which is 2 purple dice, and you have a blue die.
So are you saying anything in addition to the cargo that we're actually stealing?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
La, 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 la. Help.
Yeah, you did it.
Oh no, you did it. You absolutely did it. And those threats cancel out with those 2 advantages. Yeah, you just 2 successes.
2 successes.
She eyes you. Fine, you see a relic from the church. You can keep it, but any food, anything gold, anything really valuable, we need here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Then it's settled. When will they be nearby?
You've got a day. They're passing close by. They're going to be looking for ships like yours anyway. I don't know that you'd be able to make it out of here anyway. So those are your options.
Well, how would you, as someone who's been watching this ship in the sky for all this long, how would you even expect us to get on board? They're not going to touch down.
Well, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Johnnet Kessler. I'm the owner. I work on this ship.
Well, Johnnet, one of the great things about this situation is that's not my problem.
Oh, you made it sound like you had an idea.
So tomorrow, we'll rob the civility.
Tomorrow we'll rob the civility.
Thank you for your time.
The captain kind of abruptly scoots back his chair, stands up. There's an untouched beer on the table. Actually, it's Jonnett's because Jonnet brought his over.
He's still holding it, but then
So the captain grabs it by like the brim, moves it over to his hand, downs it in one, turns it over on the table, and then holds out his hand. We've been practicing him spitting into his hand before he goes for a handshake.
Oh, buddy.
But he doesn't have spit because he can't produce spittle anymore. So what he does is he just like squirts out some of the beer that was still in his hand to like wet his hand, and then he shoves his hand out to Sonia.
Sonia, in kind, like, I think she was too busy spitting on her hand to notice.
Yeah.
But like some of the stronger guys in the room, like, really weirded out. And
I do like the description
what we're
of some of the stronger guys in the room. Yeah. So they like shake hands, and then the captain motions for his belt as he stands up, and I like bring him his belt and he puts it back on.
Campaign Skyjacks is a one-shot network production. For more information, be sure to follow us on Twitter at @CampaignPod for updates about live shows and other events we might be doing. You can find more great gaming shows over at oneshotpodcast.com. Like One Shot. The most fun way to learn a new game is to listen to it get played. Every week on One Shot, I bring you actual play recordings with a talented cast of improvisers, game designers, and other notable nerds. Each month features a new group trying a new system, exploring a wide variety of genres. The stories are self-contained, so you can jump in anywhere, and it's a great way to discover new things. Find the magic of role-playing games with One Shot on your favorite podcast app. Johnnet Kessler was played by Tyler Davis, who can be found on Twitter at Tyler A. Dave, on Main Stage with Second City, or at I.O. with...
Okay, so that's it, folks. I will entertain one or two questions before we leave if there are any burning ones. Otherwise, it has been great hanging out with everybody. I had so much fun doing this. We'll have to do something like this again. Maybe get some of the rest of the cast involved. I can't say how much it means to me that people enjoy the show that we make. I know that we all put so much effort into it every time we sit down to record, and we're so excited seeing the response to it. The fan art, the fan fiction, uh, the ideas, people's Skyjack sonas, like it's so great to see everything that people have created because we're working on this. And I feel so privileged to be able to bring this to you. And I can tell you more good things are on the way. I am very, very excited for the live show that we're going to be doing at Gen Con. We're going to be revealing some major stuff there, which is very cool. I will say, folks who are emotionally attached to the setting, and the characters, some for real stuff is happening. So, you know, brace yourselves. I'm never going to be mean in the fiction that I create. I'm never going to do things cruelly. All the things are necessary for the story and the characters and the performers and all that. So everything will be okay. But real stuff is going to happen. So be prepared. We'll all get through it together. Yeah, I would love to do this again. This was so much fun. We will definitely do more episodes past episode 1. We might try to do another episode one stream again for folks that missed it the first time. Um yeah. uh this is it's going to be so much good stuff, and I like there is so much setting stuff that I have had bubbling up inside me that I want to talk about. So we will get to it, and it will be very good and very fun. I mean, you should be a little concerned be like medium to fairly concerned, but it will all go to good places, I assure you. So yeah, this would be super fun to do with the other cast members. I like that doing that Q&A stream with Liz was a huge blast, and I would love to do more stuff again. Now that Tyler's schedule is getting a little bit less weird, we're definitely going to be able to do more streaming stuff and more off the cuff stuff. Tyler was working almost every night of the week, which made it very difficult to do stuff like this. But now that he's not doing that, we've just got a lot more options, and it rules. I'm very, very excited. Yeah, Scooby-Doo and the Muppets are definitely involved. It's a campaign product after all. Let's see. Yeah, Muppet Treasure Island. Everybody watch Muppet Treasure Island. Prepare for that. Okay, I think with that, I am actually going to be calling it on this stream. I've had so much fun. I will put this into VODs, and we'll do other Q&A stuff, other setting development stuff. I would love to do a live bit of world building for Skyjacks. That would be really cool to do too. Sorry for the Kurt question at the beginning. I didn't even see the Kurt question, so don't worry about it. Let's see here. Yeah. Everybody enjoy your night. And remember, there are no kings. Take flight, heroes.